Hello, welcome and good evening ladies and gentlemen to another round of the NXTCC, or known in full as the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship for 2022, as brought to you on iRacing, the premier sim racing platform available only on PC. Tonight marks round 9 of the 10 round calendar, and with that of course it is the penultimate round of the season, where the points become ever more crucial and indeed tensions tighten as our drivers look to compete to be crowned champion within their respective driver class, and of course our teams look to be crowned the champion of the team's championship. It's all on the line tonight, and what better venue to commence that run to the season finale than the Silverstone circuit. But in particular, we're not running the full Silverstone circuit. As per the British Touring Car Championship schedule for 2022, we are at the National Circuit, the shortened variant consisting of 6 corners, which will provide you with a more detailed overview in due course. But with the circuit being short and there being 3 sprint races on our schedule, the racing action is going to be fast. It's going to be furious, and it's going to be packed with elbows out, door-to-door racing, which you love in touring car, and we look forward to seeing exactly how it all goes down race after race tonight. Speaking of our schedule then, our times in British Summer Time, that's BST or Universal Coordinated Time +1, UTC +1, they are as follows. We'll be going into qualifying in just under 19 minutes time, and that'll be a 15-minute qualifying session to determine our grid order for the purposes of race number 1. Straight after that, we'll be jumping into race number 1, forming the grid and going racing for the first of our 3 20-minute sprint races. And as soon as that concludes, going from 8:15 to approximately what will be 25 to 9, we'll be taking a brief breather before returning for the second sprint race, where the grid begins to get formed at approximately 10 to 9. Another 20 minutes of racing, albeit the grid made up in a slightly different order, and then we'll be taking another pause before getting ready for our final sprint race of the evening. That'll be sprint race number 3, due to kick off at approximately 9:20, and that'll be another 20 minutes of racing action with a fundamentally mixed up grid, given the nature of the rule set, which we'll come on to as always and give you a reminder about a little bit shortly. But we'll have that third and final race and see how the dust settles after that and what lies ahead going into the season finale. Tonight's broadcast, of course, is being brought to you fully live on 3 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are inclined to go to YouTube, you can always go to the official NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel and tune in there. Alternatively, if you're more of a Facebook user, you can always go to the official NXTGEN Racing Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing. And last but not least, if you're more of a Twitch user, you can go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in on Twitch. And who is TX141? Well, that is I, your host and commentator for this series. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I'll be bringing you all of your racing action as the clock ticks down in terms of the number of races we have available. And my goodness, what a journey we have been on. And last time out, it was a journey somewhat when we were in Italy, in Monza, where we saw plenty of racing action, some of it going a little bit too far. But before we go too far into that, let's go back to how the calendar has played out thus far to date. We can see that, of course, now we're right towards the bottom of our schedule. On the 6th of October, which is today, it's Silverstone National, and in a week's time, we wrap up the story at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit on the 13th of October, our season finale being at the second layout of the Kent circuit in the United Kingdom. We were, of course, there all the way back in our second round on the 11th of August, taken to the shorter Indy layout, but we were doing the fully fledged layout as of the season finale. In the build-up to round number 9, we started off back on the 4th of August at Donington Park National. Of course, the round where none of our drivers were in a car classification in terms of driver class classification. They were all racing for points overall and then looking to be assigned to their class after round number 1. Plenty of racing action at Donington Park National, but then when we made our way to Brands Hatch Indy for our first visit on the 11th of August, my goodness, the ante was up, and indeed the racing action only got ever more intense, with all of our drivers absolutely rampacked around the Indy circuit, and we saw plenty of brilliant battles, and none more so than the charges from Gavan Gardener from Verano Motorsport. 1 o'clock forward then to round number 3, we made our way across the Atlantic Ocean in the absence of Thruxton in iRacing. It's not currently implemented in iRacing. We hope it comes sometime soon. And we decided to go for a Canadian equivalent of Thruxton, known as the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. There, it was the day where Verano Motorsport seemed to dominate, and nobody seemed to be able to take the fight to the Audi RS3 drivers, but we saw plenty of battle in the midfield, particularly in the midfield of the Pro class. Then, on the 25th of August, it was back to United Kingdom for the Alton Park circuit. And at the Alton Park National layout, we saw plenty of driver go off circuit, we saw plenty of elbow come out, and many a touring car with severe damage. For Alton Park, of course, a very narrow circuit and really living up to its stereotype. And then to wrap up the first half of the season, we made our way across to the Netherlands to the Zandvoort Grand Prix circuit. In the absence of Croft, we went for the Dutch Croft equivalent, and well, my goodness, I put it out there, ladies and gentlemen, I will still maintain this. On the 1st of September, we saw perhaps the 3 best races of the season, albeit that's not to undermine all the other racing we've seen, but particularly that race number 3 at Zandvoort will always live on in my memory as a commentator, for the fact we had 7 drivers battling for the win over the entirety of 20 minutes of action, and you couldn't have called it close when you had 7 drivers in the space of 2.5 seconds. We took a week's break, and then we returned, of course, making our way to Scotland the Brave, for the 5-county circuit of Knockhill on the 15th of September, and there, through the undulations, the high curbs, and the risk versus reward nature of the circuit, we saw many a driver come unstuck, and indeed plenty of battles on through. But the story at Knockhill, HSR were back on form, with John Higgins Jr. taking 3 wins out of 3. And then we made our way to Snetterton 300, making our way back down to the east of England for what is a circuit that is much loved for its extended lap, and at Snetterton 300 circuit we saw plenty of battle in action, and indeed the rise once again of Mikey Doble after extended absences, and absolutely delivering over all 3 races. Then last time out, of course, it was the 29th of September, and with the fact we don't have Thruxton, as we mentioned previously in iRacing, we decided for our second quote-unquote visit to Thruxton to make our way to Italian Thruxton, the Monza Grand Prix circuit, and there we did see the tensions really rise and the intensity of the racing got a bit too far in some respects. And I should point out that all of our drivers have been briefed going into tonight that they just need to calm it down a little bit, because particularly in races 2 and 3, we saw some tempers really go red. And to be fair, we're no stranger to that in real world British Touring Car Championship. If you remember the Super Touring years in particular, some of the confrontations between the likes of, say, Alan Menu and Jason Plato, just named 2 drivers out of the whole rostrum. And indeed, when tempers fly, you know the racing's good. But on top of that, the championship means so much to each and every one of our drivers. And now the story continues around number 9. But speaking of the story, let's go from our season calendar to our drivers' overall points. And in particular, looking at the top 20 overall here as they make their way into tonight's round. And we can see it is Jamie Dorey who leads by 60 points over Chris Danes. And well, that gap, whilst it sounds huge, of course, this does not account for drop scores. We'll have all the drop scores in play going into the season finale next time out. But that gap of 60 points is a comfortable threshold for Jamie Dorey in terms of knowing he's got a lot of points to play with, and therefore there's not as much pressure for him to get a perfect result tonight compared to the pressure on the Verano Motorsport pair in P2 and P3 of Chris Danes and Gavan Gardener. Both of them are really digging deep at Monza, and we did see, of course, the flare-up between Dorey and Danes. And whilst we are expecting there to be tension tonight, which is the nature of the weight and the nature of the beast of racing, we're hoping it doesn't embroil over to what we saw at Monza. But both drivers, of course, being given a warning with regards to what happened at Monza. Gavan Gardener in that P3, not quite on the pace necessary to be able to steal away the victories last time out, but still a huge contender and perhaps the unsung contender when you look at this championship standings. Then best the rest in P4, Andrew Holmes on 255 points, 7 points between him and John Higgins Sr., and John Higgins Jr. returning from an extended break, now back for racing action, now only a further 9 points behind. And with that trio all close together, only separated by a margin of 16 points, the big question is, out of the trio, who is going to be the best of the rest overall? But let's not count out Lee Horn on 227 points, nor Mikey Doble, who on his return, of course, has been absolutely delivering those race performances and those results, and now he's looking to try and hunt down that P4 in the championship with little time to spare. Ben Bennyworth in P9, our leading pro driver in the overall standings on 219 points, now 8 clear of Matthew Addy in P10, with Adam Delmont on his return last week, and I think there was a huge cheer down in the paddock. I certainly, for one, was absolutely enthralled with the return of Adam Delmont after his extended absence, and he's all well and back racing, and we're going to see him for all 3 races tonight, as I'm to understand it. But Delmont, the best of the rest outside the top 10 there in P11 on 163 points, jumping ahead of Rob McGregor, and then Paul Scott, John Burnham, Mark Sykes complete the top 15, with Nigel Stott, Matt Emmons, David Whitehouse, Thomas Delaney, and Tony Vashav completing the top 20. But as we come from the overall standings then to the Drivers' Championship Pro class in particular, we can see Jamie Dorey now, when the points are readjusted for the class itself, Jamie Dorey leads by a margin there of what is now extending to 57 points. But again, this does not account for drop scores, and when you put drop scores in, that margin actually only extends to about 15 to 20 points, if that. What this means is that Gavan Gardener right now has a huge opportunity, because whilst he doesn't have as many points overall by comparison when those drop scores come in, that gap comes down. If Gardner can steal a huge result here today and carry that wave of momentum forward into the season finale, there is no reason why he cannot take away the championship from Jamie Dorey right as they're coming to the conclusion. Remember, both of these drivers have yet to win an official next-gen racing series, so it is all on the line between them. Chris Danes there in P3 on 353 points after a difficult time at Monza in the battle to the lead, now starting to fall a little bit towards John Higgins Sr. and also Lee Horn there, but still, Chris Danes, you know, you can depend on him to deliver round after round and continue to try and hunt down each and every point out on circuit. John Higgins Sr. on 345 points, closing on the top 3 gradually, with Lee Horn then a sizable 30 points behind, and will the HSR driver of Higgins really now starting to put the pressure on the Verano Motorsport pair of Gardener and Danes. So they drop any points, he'll be right up there in the mix of the top 3. Lee Horn, however, perhaps the undersung hero of the circuit, in the fact that whilst he's not been putting out the stellar performances compared to the top 4, he's still been delivering time and time again, and there's a reason why he's in P5, 6 clear of Matthew Addy, who in P6 right now has the odd rock and a hard play situation of trying to chase down Lee Horn, but staying ahead of John Higgins Jr., who'll be back firing on all cylinders tonight. Andrew Holmes, Rob McGregor and Mikey Doe will complete the top 10, with Adam Delmont in P11 and then Tony Vashav completing the Pro Championship in P12. But meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, we can see that the story is a little bit different. We have a runaway championship leader in the form of Ben Bennyworth, the man who had his personal record and indeed his series record broken, well not in fact broken, brought to a halt I should say, last time out of Monza. He had been on an absolute charge of triplets of wins in each and every round, and he made it 10 in a row before he lost out in race number 1, where it all went wrong. You can imagine, however, the fact he made it a win in race number 2 and a win in race number 3 at Monza in class. If he brought home the win in race number 1, that record that he's been setting would have only continued up to 13 wins, but still 10 in a row on on the bounce, and Ben Bennyworth now leads the Prime Championship by a margin of 152 points over Paul Scott. Now, with that in mind, what does that mean for tonight? With Ben Bennyworth scores high tonight, indeed in attendance, and I believe he did say to us he won't be in attendance at Brands Hatch Grand Prix for the season finale, but if he scores high tonight, he can take the Prime Championship crown with a round to spare and take all the pressure off his shoulders and not leave it up to fate. Paul Scott will be hoping for the opposite, but the problem that Paul Scott's got is that 3 points behind him is John Burnham, who's continuing to build momentum. So Paul Scott would love to hunt down Bennyworth, but will he be more focused on watching his rearview mirror with John Burnham fast approaching? Mark Sykes in P4, the Veloster driver jumping up into P4 and 274 points and not looking back as he continues to press on, with Nigel Stott then 238 points, perhaps one of the unluckiest drivers of the series in the fact he's had a lot of pace in the car typically but not been able to deploy it because of incidents or things outside of his control, but we look forward to seeing if he can continue to bring things back under control. 20 points clear of Matt Emmons there, with Mark Harrismith P7, David Whitehouse P8, Thomas Delaney P9 and Michael Crees completing the Pram top 10. And there's Josh Brown, Michael Crees, and with that we've got two names duplicated there. I do believe that may be a slight error on the standings. I'm just double checking with our organisers, but it does look as though there's been a little bit of an error, and we can see Colin Martin in P13. But as we now come to the Teams Championship, we can see that Next Gen Racing Orange a lead on 695 points with a comfortable margin in excess of 100 points. To be specific there, that's 132 points over HSR. It's not the case that Next Gen Racing Orange have sealed the championship. If they score well today, they could seal it. But if they do not score well today, then HSR will be right there breathing down the necks. But speaking of breathing down the necks, HSR have got to worry about the fact they have Verano Motorsport close behind on 557, only 6 points behind. And it's Next Gen Racing Green bringing up P4 and the rest of the field on 474 points, only 5 clear of Next Gen Racing Blue. Then Prime stacking with Solar Racing in P6, ahead of Crest Autosport with Pebbles P7, SVPMR with Next Gen, rounding off the Teams Championship in P8 on 57 points. But as we come from points to the circuit for today, we are of course located near the town of Silverstone in the Northamptonshire County of England, the United Kingdom, for the Silverstone circuit, the national layout. And as you can see from the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com, thank you to them as always for their 2D maps, which are absolutely invaluable. This circuit, whilst it is short, consisting of only 6 corners in the run from what is turn number 1 at Copse all the way back round to Woodcock Corner at turn number 6, this circuit is hard and fast in its approach, and that means that drivers will not be able to make an easy breakaway. We saw in the MX5 Cup Season 2 just how close the racing action was, and we're going to see that again here in the touring car racing class. There's no doubt about that. For as our drivers make their way across the start-finish line into Copse Corner, the fastest flying right-hander of this circuit, as they break their way into turn number 1, a dab of the brakes and chuck the car in. It'll then be the charge down towards turns 2 and 3, into Maggotts Corner and Aintree on the exit, and as they make their way through turn number 2, a hairpin S corner at 2 into 3, you'll see our drivers have to come heavy on the anchors and battle their way through before they charge their way down the Wellington Straight. The run down the Wellington Straight will see plenty of slipstream racing action and also battles on the brakes into Brooklands at turn 4, and as they make their way through the left into right complex of Brooklands through to Luffield at turn 5, we'll see our drivers there looking for moves around the outside to inside or the inside to outside, and on emergence from Luffield they have to charge through Woodcock Corner at turn number 6 completely flat out to start it all again, and with a lap time in just in excess of a minute or just on a minute on the bubble in qualifying, that means we're going to see plenty of racing laps here in each of our 3 races. But as for our races, we can only go racing with rules, and let's give you a reminder of them. In terms of the setup, this is a fixed setup series based on the current iRacing balance performance and the setups provided. In the sprint races, the race 1 grid will of course be set based on the results of qualifying. The race 2 grid shall be set based on the results of race number 1, and then it will be the case that in race number 3, the grid shall be set as a reverse grid based on the results of race 2, with the reversal position being drawn live from between 6th place and 12th place. So what that'll mean for what is race number 3 for the uninitiated, we'll cut over to the commentary booth where I'll do the lottery ball draw or the lottery sticky note draw, as you'll get to see for where the reverse grid position is going to be taken from, and then whichever one it's announced, that will be the position that starts on pole. So if I draw the number 10, it'll be the case that P10, who finished in P10 in race number 2, will be starting on pole for race number 3, and conversely, the winner of race number 2 starts in P10. The drivers who finish P11 and lower, meanwhile, you may have guessed it, will be starting P11 and lower in the race number 3 grid. And also, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 20 or more instant points. But with all that explained, I know what you're all here for. You're not here for rules and regulations and points recaps, although that adds to the story. You're here for the racing action. And as we return to the circuit now, we can see all our drivers getting ready to go, and we can see here in particular our what is our championship leader overall, and of course in the Pro Championship, Jamie Dorey currently making his way on around in his final warm-up practice session with just over 4 minutes to go, and as they come charging on down towards what is turn number 4 here, you can see the HSR drives together as well. I think a little bit of shenanigans going on out on circuit at the moment, but all our drives absolutely itching to go racing, and well, we do have the full complement of HSR here today of Rob McGregor, John Higgins Jr. and John Higgins Sr. You can see Jr. there in the blue-yellow HSR machine, of course, all running the Hyundai Elantra as they make their way on the round, and it's been the car that has really foxed them over the course of this season. At certain circuits, the Elantra has been absolutely phenomenal. At other circuits, the car has really struggled, and was a bit of a struggle there as they both come together, McGregor and also Higgins Jr. But again, a little bit of playing about from both drivers at the moment, and they'll be looking to calm it on down when they go into qualifying. But that Elantra seemingly very strong on the temperatures. The ambient temperatures and the track temperatures are not too high. Meanwhile, the car that seems to have been the all-around all season is the Honda Civic Type R. And we can see here we do have some drivers highlighted in yellow today on the standings, and one of them you're looking at is TSRC's Andrew Pike. Now let's clarify, these drivers highlighted in yellow are guest drivers to the series. They are participating tonight under the guest framework. It will be the case that they are not scoring points within a particular class. They have not been assigned to a class, but these drivers are turned up on the premise that they're allowed to go racing, but at the same time they do have to respect the fact that there is an ongoing championship, and these drivers, you can imagine, are potentially interested in taking part in future series at Next Gen Racing, including the potential prospect of a Season 2 of the Next Gen Touring Car Championship, although more on that potentially in the near future. Not trying to give away anything at the moment, but these drivers are all itching to go racing, and indeed have been given permission to take to the racing, much like you would see guest drivers or private drivers in the real world of motorsport. They may take part in 1 or 2 rounds, and they're the equivalent effectively. They're able to pay their way into a couple rounds, but not the full championship. And we do have 2 drivers from the Sim Racing Collective, or TSRC, of Andrew Pike and Kieran Sharp, 2 fantastic drivers, an absolute gentleman in the Sim World Motor Racing arena. And well, I've had the pleasure of seeing them race in a set of course of Competizione series, an alternative sim on PC, and I can tell you that both Sharp and Pike, both very fast drivers, and I think they're going to do quite well, and they're looking quite strong, it must be said, in this final practice session, given the times they're putting in right in the midfield and chasing after the top 5 of what is there, the Pro class. And good luck to them, and also to Wayne Douglas, the privateer here, who makes his way on around through turn number 6, and we'll see him taking to the circuit in the Hyundai Elantra tonight, and how can he get on as well. Currently 1/10 of the fastest lap set in this practice session by Mikey Doble. But of course we do have 3 guest drivers here, and then we have all of our standard 4A of drivers, and that means in total today we have a grand total of 21 drivers taken to the circuit, 18 main series drivers and 3 guests, which means we're going to have an absolutely crowded Silverstone National Circuit, and that can only add to the spectacle and indeed the fantastic nature of the racing as we're about to get underway. But speaking about being able to get underway shortly, we say hello there in the Facebook chat to KT Eames and Elwyn Sykes. I hope you both are doing well and all set to go. And we see KT Eames there saying that Plato and Neil, so that's Matt Neil in particular, were always the best confrontations, little and large indeed. Well, goodness me, I do know they still exchange some banter on Twitter from what I've seen, regaling in the old days of motorsport, and indeed some fantastic racing in the Super Touring era, and also as they made their way into the more modern era of touring cars, particularly now with the introduction of the hybrid touring car as of 2022. And we see KT Eames also predicting carnage incoming in the Facebook chat. We also say hello in the YouTube chat there to Motorsport Magpie, and well, it's unfortunate, Mr. Whitehouse, we won't be seeing you racing again this season, as you say that, as mental health has gone downhill, so not able to commit, but I do hope you're doing all the best you can, and well, I wish you all the best. Imagine your mental health. Indeed, mental health is not something to be joking about. Just to take a brief moment there, it is the case, we should all do our best to look after our mental health, and indeed all be there for each other where we can to support one another and give a lending hand. But I do hope you're doing well, David, as best as you possibly can, and we look forward to seeing you rejoin in a future series as hosted by NXTGEN. Also wishing everyone good luck wishing good luck to everyone who is racing. And also there we see Elwyn Sykes in the YouTube chat as well, and well, hope you're doing well, Elwyn, and also wishing the best of luck to Mark Sykes, the brother from another mother. I absolutely love that, and I should point out that Elwyn Sykes and Mark Sykes are not related. That was a question we did have, of course, in the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship a number of times there, and whilst they're not related, I think they've sort of become racing brothers, if you will, given the fact that we've had fantastic racing action between the pair in our series. But as the clock strikes 1 hour, it's now time for us to go into qualifying, and we've got 15 minutes of qualifying here at the Silverstone National Circuit. Who is going to come out on top Scott by the end of it? Let's find out as all of our drivers make the way out onto the circuit. And well, our first driver to come roaring on out the pit lane, I do believe it is Kieran Sharp, who heads on through here in the TSRC Honda Civic Type R. And as he comes on out, we should point out there are of course 4 cars which our drivers could choose from at the start of this season all that time ago. As we see a traffic cone there being taken out of the pit lane, I think that is by Matt Evans unless I'm mistaken. And well, that poor traffic cone there, well, it's not going to be stationary for much longer, and it must be out the way by now so that way our drivers can all go safely racing. Well, it was the case when we started off the season. Our drivers had the choice of the Honda, the Hyundai Elantra, the Hyundai Veloster, alternatively the Audi RS3. And speaking of the Audi RS3, well, we do see Gavan Gardener here making his way through in the Verano Motorsport RS3 with the very bright wheel rims, the pink wheel rims, which distinguishes the car. But speaking of distinguish themselves, here goes Kieran Sharp then for our first flying lap of this qualifying session as he makes his way out of Love Field and charges all the way up through Woodcock Corner at turn number 6 to go on to his first flying lap. So as he makes his way through the right-hand kink and across that timeline, you'll see he'll bring the car gradually over to the left and use the left-hand entry curve there to open up the corner, dabbing on the brakes at approximately 75 metres, bringing the car to 4th gear, attacking the apex and then powering out and using the runoff area there. He's allowed to run wide so long as he keeps 2 wheels on the white line, and as he now makes his way down towards turns 2 and 3, braking into the maglets into Aintree Hairpin Complex, you can see there snapping on the brakes at turn number 3 into 2nd gear and now exiting out, using the space point on the left-hand side there to run the car out and build up speed as he now charges all the way down the Wellington Straight up towards turns 4 and 5. And as he gets ready to brake into turn number 4, looks to his right, brings the car over to the right and brakes just after the 100 metre point. In fact, braking there at about 55 metres. Trail braking all the way into corner apex and then letting the car come out to the inside for turn number 5 and staying very close to the hairpin apex here as he makes his way out through the corner, gets on the throttle nice and early and then charges on round to a complete lap. A nice smooth lap there from Sharp. And what's it going to be as he comes to the timeline for our first flying lap of this session? Well, it is going to be about 1 minute 1, I reckon, and he comes across that timeline and it is a 1 minute 1.9, and we've still got plenty more laps to come. That's just the first of many here in this qualifying session. We expect our drivers to put in at least 10 qualifying laps, given the fact these tyres do not wear too rapidly. As we see here, Wayne Douglas coming on through, and what can Douglas do? As we see Brown there goes P3 for the time being, but immediately Mikey Doble goes at provisional pole at 101.682, and as we do see Wayne Douglas coming across the line there, nice lap from him at 102.2. We've still got more to come, including of course Paul Scott here, and Paul Scott's got a lot of pressure on him today to deliver in qualifying, given the fact that right now it is do or die if he wants to try and keep Bennyworth within arm's reach going into the season finale at Brands Hatch next week. But the challenge is with Bennyworth looking so strong and comfortable round after round in the Audi RS3 as well. And that's the thing that really must hurt for Paul Scott, is the fact that his opponent in the championship is in the same car. And whilst our drivers are allowed to adjust the brake bias on the car, because the setups are fixed, they're not allowed to adjust anything else. And that translates into, really, it does come down to how the driver's hooked up with the car, rather than a particular car having an advantage when you're both in the same car and you can only adjust one particular aspect, which is more of a driver preference in terms of that brake bias. So put it together, Bennyworth really has seemed to have found that mastery of the Audi RS3, and Paul Scott has been doing very well in it, to be fair. But at the same time, Bennyworth has always just had that extra couple of attempts every round in qualifying. He's taken it into the races, and that is what has enabled Bennyworth to pull out such a lead at a major point in the series. After what was really round number 4, we just saw Bennyworth come alive. And as we see Paul Scott coming across the line, P9 is his first valid lap, and he's got some way to go as he drops to P10 with Rob McGregor taking that P3, as we do see the HSR driver here, and McGregor of course in the blue-green machine, going a bit wide there out of turn number 1, but at the same time using that to most likely reset himself and now get himself set up for another lap. But so far nobody's been quite able to dethrone Mikey Doble's initial pole laps. 101.1 there for Mikey Doble, but as they come through, oh goodness me, and it looks like the next gen racing teams here all tripping over one another, as there's a bit of contact there between Mikey Doble and the number 24 car of Josh Brown. Now it should be pointed out that there are 3 next gen racing teams racing this series, 3 brother or sister teams if you will, and they are all racing against one another, and therefore they're all going to be stacking up and trying to gain the toe off of each other. And we can expect in qualifying that once our drivers are put in their initial qualifying laps, there will be attempts by drivers to try and utilise the slipstream off of the cars in front in order to be able to gain versus their rivals. We saw that at Monza very strongly, and of course Monza being a slipstream orientated circuit by default given the length of its straights. We haven't got as long straights here at Silverstone National, but a slipstream toe could really help out, particularly in the run down the Wellington straight. As you can see, Dorey here really being caught up behind Brown as they make the way out to turn 3 and down towards 4. I think Dorey there was giving Brown a little bit of a push out of Aintree and down the Wellington straight. I think that's given a little bit of a boost, but Dorey now trying to cut his way on through, understandably so, because he wants to go as Brown there holds wide and lets Dorey pass on. I think that means Brown's lap will be compromised, but in return he'll gain the draft of the Next Gen Racing orange driver in front. As meanwhile Kieran Sharp goes to provisional pole there 5 minutes in with a 101.1, and as he makes his way down towards turn number 2 once again, could we potentially see a guest driver take pole? Well, it's not happened in the season's history so far, indeed the series history, given this is the first season of the series, but some would dare to believe to dream. And as he makes his way out to 3 and now down towards turns 4 and 5, well, I think Sharp and also Douglas here are both really pressed on, but I think that's just as much a sign of the track evolving and tyre temperature really coming up with it, fuel coming out of the cars as well, so these lap times will continue to improve. And we did see in the final practice session drivers setting times that were 1 minute flat, 0.2, 0.3, so we could see those laps really come to the fore when we get towards the end of this qualifying session. We're not even halfway through the session at the moment as Douglas heads on down towards turn number 4, but as he charges on down, we look to Gazwill, who returns to the series as of tonight, a bit absent over the last couple of rounds due to personal circumstances, but it's great to see him returning. And well, of course, the story of Gazwill over the season, he has been a rookie, and this has been his first series that he's ever taken part in on iRacing. And whilst at the start of the season back at Donington, some of you remember, he was a whole 4 seconds off the pace approximately on average. He has really closed that delta over the course of the season down to about 2 seconds to 3 seconds depending on the circuit off of the race leader, and it is gradually bringing him closer and closer to the rear end of the pro field. And with it, he has picked up some sizable points, just avoiding carnage and contact and bringing on home good results, which is what it's sometimes all about, and he's been learning each and every round. And indeed, he has been a bit of a fan favourite. I know there's quite a few who tune in on the Facebook chat in particular for Mr. Will, and as he makes his way out to turn number 5 and onwards towards the end of this lap, let's see him come to the line, and where he does improve this time. Improved in sector 2. What about in sector 3 as he comes on through? Well, it's going to be a bit close here, but I don't think that's going to be too much of a sizable improvement. And in fact, it was 103.2. A nice lap there from Will, but I think he's got a bit more time out there and just needs to hook up sector 1 in particular, which is run through turn 1 all the way into turn number 2. We're going from the driver who's at the bottom of the standings right now to a driver who's about midway up the standings, and in particular that is John Higgins Jr., who returning today, well, absolutely rested and now looking to go racing once more. Could we potentially see a return to the top step for the HSR driver? We would love to see it, of course, but we can see at the moment there is a very close competition between all of the cars in this touring car racing class. And as we ride on board here with Higgins Jr., he's got Rob McGregor in front of him, his teammate, who he can take a distant toe off of as he makes his way onto another flying lap very shortly. Ahead of them, you'll see Paul Scott just about to come to the end of the lap, currently P16 as he crosses the line. Where does Paul Scott go in the overall proceedings? Jumps up to P6, but we now follow the lap of John Higgins Jr. as he heads into turn number 1, braking quite early there, in fact braking at about 80 metres into a Copse corner, and as he exits out here, using the draft of McGregor. And I wonder if he's having to back the car off slightly because of that draft and that dirty air into the high-speed corners. But coming into turns 2 and 3, into the Maggots, into Aintree complex, we can see here nicely hooked up and stamping back on that throttle immediately as he touches the turn 3 apex and getting the power down and following at McGregor all the way up towards turn number 4. Albeit both drivers, they're really sweeping to the right-hand side of the road in order to get out of the toe of Paul Scott, who's backed off. But as they break the way into turn 4, Higgins Jr. really keeping the car nicely hooked up, and you can see that the body language of the car pointed precisely towards the turn 4 apex, going for a late apex. And as he comes through 5, he's going to get on the power nice and early, use a bit of a V-shaped exit to clear the apex curve and get the power down. Now charging all the way out towards the line. I think this lap has had to be backed off a little bit, in fact, as we do see there on our timing that the sector 1 was not quite up to scratch, but sectors 2 and 3 have been quite strong. And well, he moves from P12 to P10 overall, but I think Higgins Jr. knows there's a bit more time out there, given the fact he did have a slightly compromised sector 1 as he makes his way down towards turn number 2 once again. But as he charges on down, it is very close right now in the qualifying standings. You can see there Mikey Doble's provisional pole lap, a 1 minute 0.6, and then from what is Doble's lap to a second further down, we have got P1 through to P17 separated by a second. That is how close it is. Of course, it is a very short lap, so that is a natural result of a short lap, but in turn it goes to show you how competitive this field is. And in terms of surprises right now, we have not got any major surprises, although one thing I am noticing, Chris Dane's not in attendance tonight, which is unfortunate. We would love to have seen the Runner Motorsport driver here today at Silverstone National, but perhaps he's going to be using this one as a break week and then coming charging back into the season finale at Brands Hatch Grand Prix. But Chris, if you are watching, I hope you're doing well, and we do look forward to seeing you return, hopefully for the season finale, because we would love to see you with your teammate Gavan Gardener out on circuit. But as we do see here, Gardener heading down into turn number 3. Right now, all the pressure is on him to try and deliver here today. And, well, to be fair to Gardener, if there's one thing we can count on from him, he may not be the fastest man on circuit, but by damned, he will give it his best to try and show that he's the most consistent man on circuit. And we have seen some brilliant moves from Gardener over the course of the season. There's a reason why he's up in the top 3 in the overall and the Pro Championship standings as he makes his way through turn at number 4 and into 5. Currently P4 or P3 effective if you remove guest drivers from the mix there on the timing tower, but as he comes through at turn at number 5, the question is, how can we expect the Audi RS3 go here today? Well, so far we are seeing quite a varied run of form for the Audi RS3 in this qualifying session. Gardener right up there towards the top in the top 5. Conversely, Bennyworth all the way down P15. Paul Scott P9 and John Burnham in P18. But I think the story of the Audi here is it's going to be strong in the race, given the fact that it's a strong car in terms of straight line speed and acceleration. But one of the downsides of the Audi, and we've heard it being talked about time and time again in the course of this season, is the fact the car does have a tendency when it's running in the draft of another car to overheat, and that may be something that our Audi drivers have to worry about today, because we are expecting there to be quite the heavy draft off of the cars in front. We're expecting our field to run very close for the majority of the 3 races, and therefore our Audi drivers may just feel the pinch of that engine temperature. But as we can see, they're going off circuit brilliantly. That was Lee Horn making his way wide there to give the space to Ben Bennyworth, and well, our championship leader in the Pro-Am class, as he comes on through to go on to another lap. We ride on board with him, but that lap was not a strong one, but hopefully now he can hook it up on this one, because he's running out of time as he heads into turn number 1. Now, one of the things that we should note, and you'll see that on the digital dashboard on the left-hand side of the screen, bottom left-hand corner, where you'll see the gear number, it's 5th gear at the moment. The Audi has a much higher gearing in terms of it wants to be in those higher gears by default compared to the other touring car racing class machines available on iRacing. And that means the Audi does end up in a bit of a fickle situation, whereby our drivers sometimes have to sacrifice exit acceleration by being a slightly higher gear. The car will bog down initially, but then it really builds up as it goes towards the higher RPM band. It starts to build those revs, and that is what I think we're seeing here as we ride on board still with Bennyworth. Not quite hooked up in sectors 1 and 2. I just don't think he can find a way right now to get more time out of the car. But as we said in the build-up, he does have quite a sizable championship advantage. The qualifying down in P15 is not necessarily doom and gloom for him. It means that the change becomes a bit harder for him to wrap everything up tonight, but he has that comfortable margin. And as we have seen in the past, when Bennyworth doesn't qualify up towards the front of the Pro-Am class, as he comes across the timeline there and does not improve on his lap, in fact a bit of a slower lap, when Bennyworth does not qualify in pole, he does find a way through in the race, particularly where everything else happens. But as he makes his way on down and around through turn at number 1 and up towards 2, we have confirmation that we've just had Matt Emmons join us in his Honda Civic, so the next gen racing driver is going to be taking part, which means we've got now 22 drivers taking to the Silverstone National Circuit. Well, it is going to be a crowded day here at the British Circuit, but we love to see it. With 2 minutes on the clock now, can Emmons put a lap in, or will he be starting from the back? As all goodness will, that's gone straight on there for Mark Arrowsmith, and I think that may be a disconnection for Arrowsmith, and the fact he just went straight on, no brakes whatsoever, and that is very unfortunate. Hopefully that's not a sign of Arrowsmith potentially having connectivity issues literally before he goes into the race, because we've only got 1.5 minutes of qualifying, plus about a minute's worth of overtime, and then a further minute of transition time to the grid. But hopefully Arrowsmith, if there is a connectivity issue, he can get that fixed beforehand. He can get the car repaired as well, because otherwise he may not be making it to the grid for race number 1, and we don't wish that on anyone. But as they make the way on around here, we can see Josh Brown still trying to find a way into the top 15, not quite there at the moment. Also looking to Tom Delaney here, the SVPMR driver, as he makes his way through turn at number 5, currently down in P19. And the Honda Civic does seem to be one of those cars where you either hook it up on the corners, where you just got no pace in the car, particularly on the straights, but this car is a little bit lackluster compared to its peers, and Delaney right now has got it all to do, given the fact that he's down in P18. but sorry, P19 I should say, as we've had some drivers jump up positions. But also the big question is who is currently provisional pole in the Pro class, and that is Mark Sykes, who's in the pit lane. In fact, he's left the car and he thinks it's all done and dusted. He's P9 overall. Paul Scott's the next Pro driver in P12, but coming back to the very top of the standings, here is Mikey Doble, currently on a 1 minute .692, the only driver to hit the .6s over the course of this qualifying session so far. He's got a 10th over teammate Jamie Dorey, and to be fair, I don't think that Jamie Dorey is going to worry too much about that, given his Colin Turkington-esque approach, where he's played the calculations and wants to focus on getting the points rather than the trophies, because of course, once he gets to the end of the season, if it works out precisely, he'll get a massive trophy in return. And as he comes on out there, now the checker flag is out. Jamie Dorey jumps into the pits. He's decided he's had enough. Who else is going to improve? As we do see there, the HSR machines of Rob McGregor and also John Higgins Jr. come across the line. McGregor does improve to P5. Higgins Jr. does not improve. Meanwhile, more drivers coming on through. Our next driver to make the one through will be Matthew Addy, as McGregor did in the end improve his time. We've had it updated on the timing screens, but not enough to change places. And well, Matthew Addy now makes his way into the pits. He has decided this lap's to be aborted. What about meanwhile Gaz Will as he comes in? And no, he's making his way into the pits. We've still got some more drivers coming on through, including there is, oh goodness me, Nigel Stock and Josh Brown have come together, and well, that is very unfortunate for the pair of them, and Stock just cannot seem to have any luck this season, as we see meanwhile John Higgins Sr. coming on through turn number 5, and as he makes his way on out here, can he improve further? He's down in sectors 1 and 2. I do not think this is going to be an improving lap. Kieran Sharp's come across the line. He's currently P6. Does he improve at all? No, he does not. And in our last ride to complete a qualifying lap will be John Higgins Sr., and he does not improve from P8. So in the end, all said and done, it is Mikey Doble who takes pole position here today at Silverstone National in the Pro class, and in the Pro class, it is Mark Sykes in the Hyundai Veloster that puts it on pole in class in P9. But what a qualifying session it's been. Plenty of time, plenty of laps turned. Most of our drivers turned in at least 11, if not up to 13 laps. But the story is all told in qualifying, and now we get ready to transition over to grid 1 for race number 1. So as we transition into the build-up to race number 1, then let's take you through that grid as it's set. We can see then for race 1 of round 9 of the NXTGEN Racing Touring Car Championship for 2022, Mikey Doble lines up on pole by 1.5 tenths the end over Jamie Dorey. The two NXTGEN Racing Orange drivers line up on the front row. Behind them on row number 2, it's their teammate of Adam Delmont from NXTGEN Racing Orange, joined by the privateer and guest of Wayne Douglas P4. Then on row number 3, we have Rob McGregor from HSR. He just managed to out-qualify Kieran Sharp from the Sim Racing Collective. Then Gavan Gardener in P7 starts off row number 4 with John Higgins Sr. from HSR P8, with Mark Sykes then starts off row number 5 behind our Pro-Am pole sitter for NXTGEN Racing Blue, joined by John Higgins Jr. The HSR driver starts P10. Andrew Pike from the Sim Racing Collective starts P11, joined by Paul Scott from NXTGEN Racing Blue, P12 on that 6th row, and then behind them on row number 7 we have Lee Horn from NXTGEN Racing Green, joined by his teammate of Matthew Addy. On row number 8, Ben Benniwer from Prime stacking with Solo Racing, who is joined by Josh Brown from JVW Racing in P16, and then we have Nigel Stott and John Burnham, P17, P18. They make up row number 9, with Tom Delaney and Mark Arrowsmith making up row number 10. And then on our final row, Gaz Will out-qualifying Matt Emmons, as we expect Matt Emmons to take to the grid very shortly. Emmons not putting in a time, but we have 22 drivers in attendance today. That's how the grid stands, and now we get ready to go racing for the first 20 minutes of racing action here at the Silverstone National. And whilst we do wait for that grid to be finalised, absolutely beautiful scenery here today. Indeed, beautiful weather. A bit of cloud coming over the circuit, but otherwise it is clear conditions and an ideal time to race. And as we continue to see our drivers just sitting on the grid here, only 10 seconds before they go racing. And indeed, everybody itching to get started. Those ignitions are set, and now we wait for the lights. One red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. Green. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 1 here at Silverstone as Mikey Doble looks to lead into turn number 1. He gets a good start with his teammates clustering in behind, but look at this already. Kieran Sharp getting the jump on Wayne Douglas into turn 1 behind Gavan Gardener. Under a bit of pressure, goes a bit deep versus Rob McGregor as they come through 1 and charge down towards 2. We've got some drivers off. Mark Sykes off on the right-hand side of the picture there, and some other drivers as well as they come on down. I think Lee Horn went with Mark Sykes as they all come into Aintree very shortly, but first it's Maggots. You can see a bit further back there. Matthew Addy trying to go round the outside of John Higgins Jr. as they come through 3 and now down the Wellington straight. They charge. We've got a driver off there in the background. That's Gaz Will. We've also got Nigel Stock involved in the wars further back, and as they make the way down the back straight, we can see already a number of drivers all side by side battling, including Rob McGregor, who cuts his way past John Higgins Sr. here to leave Gavan Gardener behind. But in return, the 2 HSR drivers are now trying to form a bit of a rolling roadblock here to keep Gardner at bay and hold position as they come through turn number 5. But can they do it? Well, Gardner's getting his elbows out early here and making sure that HSR can't form the roadblock as they make the way into turn number 6 and complete the opening lap. As they come on through here, of course, all the drivers being told to keep it cool, but at the same time all trying to gain early position and ground as they head on to lap number 2. A bit further back we can see Ben Bennyworth here, whilst he didn't qualify well, gaining a lot of ground at the start, gaining a place, and meanwhile making his way at the inside out, Paul Scott, who goes wide and off circuit there at turn at number 1. And in fact, as Paul Scott drops back down the order, picking up a slowdown for his troubles, we can see Higgins Jr. here under pressure, battling with Matthew Addy, the 2 pro drivers going toe to toe. But look at Tom Delaney meanwhile, and Delaney gaining 7 places at the start, has jumped into the lead of what is the prime class as he heads his way down the back straight, and they make the way all the way out towards turn at number 4 again. But looking a bit further up front, we can see Adam Delmont meanwhile diving up the inside of Wayne Douglas, who found himself ahead of Delmont as they made the way onto the back straight. But now they switch places once again, and Pike meanwhile, well, he has got ahead of Higgins Senior. I think Higgins Senior there just been passed by Pike, unless I'm very much mistaken, as they come through turn number 5 once more and head on around to complete lap number 2. The battling still continues, and Bennyworth versus Delaney, and Bennyworth is going all in here. Keep your eyes on the black Audi that's going to try and go round the outside of Delaney into turn number 1. Behind them, Mark Arrowsmith also trying to get into the fight as they head into the fast right-hander at Cops Corner, and as they do, Delaney defends, but can Bennyworth hang all the way round the outside? There's contact there between Arrowsmith and Bennyworth is turned but catches the car, and Arrowsmith there did well to stop the 2 of them from going further off. But as they come charging down towards turn number 3, Paul Scott has jumped past them all and made his way back into lead of the prime class here, and for Paul Scott this is critical. He needs these places back as soon as possible for the simple reason he has got to beat Ben Benioff in order to have any chance of keeping his championship hopes alive come the end of tonight. But as they head down the back straight, things do finally settle for a brief moment as they head in towards turn number 4, and as they do, that gives us an opportunity to reload the overlay so that way you can see the circuit map on the screen in the top right corner. But as they head on through the final corners and on to what will be lap number 3, as they stand after 3 laps of racing, well, in fact it is 3 laps of racing, going on to lap number 4 I should say, Mikey Doble leads ahead of Jamie Dorey in P2, Wayne Douglas P3, Kieran Sharp P4, followed by Adam Delmont in P5, then it's Rob McGregor P6, Andrew Pike P7, a little bit further back from the top 6, followed by John Higgins Senior P8, and then we have Gavan Gardener P9, followed by John Higgins Jr. in P10, then Matthew Addy Besteres P11 before the leader of the prime class there, Paul Scott, who's trying to break away from Tom Delaney. He's in P12, Tom Delaney P13, Ben Bennyworth P14, still trying to find his way past Thomas Delaney, but it is the case here that Delaney is really fighting hard, and Bennyworth's got to put his nose in up the inside there into turn number 3 to have any chance of coming on through, because the Honda driver of Delaney is really doing everything he can to thwart the Audi driver. This isn't to try and help out a teammate or anything along those lines. Delaney's just wanting to go racing here today, and it shows as they make the way up towards turn at number 4. But now Bennyworth's got the cover on the inside here, and I think this will just keep Delaney at bay as they make the way through 4 and up towards turn number 5, and Bennyworth finally clears the major banana skin of Tom Delaney. And well, to be fair, Delaney there proving that he can dig in and fight it out hard, but at the same time, as we see, Matt Evans running a bit wide. Well, he's gained multiple places since the start, gained 6 places, but he won't be gaining any ground by running wide there, as he's now got it all to do once again to close up to the battle in front of him. But as it continues in towards turn number 1, we can see Mark Arrowsmith now, who we ride on board, really trying to make the move versus Delaney for P3 in the prime class, P14 overall, as they head on out of turn number 1 and down towards turns 2 and 3. And as they make the way onto the brakes very shortly, can Arrowsmith make the move early? He's going to look for it here on the brakes. No, he can't make it count. He's got to wait, but Delaney will now know that it's coming, and when it does come, Arrowsmith is going to go all in as they make the way on down the Wellington straight, and behind John Burnham here. Well, Burnham having a reasonable start, getting 2 places, but the challenge of Burnham really has been trying to find his way past this prime pack in his own prime machine, the prime stacking with side of racing driver, and just not quite able to pick them off at the moment. But meanwhile, looking from towards the back end of the field to the front end of the field, Wayne Douglas is up to P2 ahead of Jamie Dorey. Now do keep in mind our guest drives of Douglas, Sharp and Pike will not score any points, and they technically do not disrupt any point scoring overall or in the respective classes. So for Jamie Dorey right now, if he finishes in P3, it will be classified, as I'm to understand it, as a P2 overall, and therefore he may be feeling a little bit comfortable given the fact that the next driver driver officially in this series is his teammate Adam Delmont behind, but Delmont's got a problem, and that is that Rob McGregor is all over the back of him as they head into turn number 3. They make their way into the right-hand hairpin, and as they do, you can see McGregor's ceramic brake disc down the rear of the car, absolutely burning red hot. And well, for McGregor, the challenge will be that can he keep those brakes nice and cool or within the operating temperature window, and also make the move in, because we know that the HSR Lancias really, or indeed the Lancias in general, have really struggled with temperatures on the tyres over the course of the season. We see there Douglas going a little bit deep, and Kieran Sharp trying to make his way round the outside. Through turn number 5 they go, and well, Wayne Douglas here holding firm, making Sharp have to go all the way round the houses, and they're still battling as they make the way through turn number 6. Through Wilcott Corner they go, and meanwhile behind, McGregor here made his way past Jamie Dorey. In fact, where has Jamie Dorey gone in all of this? He's had an off circuit surely, because Jamie Dorey has dropped a long way back, and we did not see what exactly happened, but Jamie Dorey's got it all wrong somewhere on circuit, gone overly deep, and he's fallen behind this whole group of drivers, and now it's Wayne Douglas who effectively is leading this group, and Mikey Doe will just disappearing off into the distance. Our race leaders 4 seconds up the road. Meanwhile, these guys don't mind it, they're all battling for P2, and Kieran Sharp's now got Adam Delmont on his inside. It'll be the outside as they head down towards turn number 4. In the long charge they go, but you can see there Douglas holding the outside. Delmont will capitalise on the toe. But Kieran Sharp here, I think, is going all in on the brakes as they head heavy on the anchors into turn 4. Delmont tries to turn in, but he finds Kieran Sharp away. So we've got a lock up there for Wayne Douglas, who goes very deep. It's 3 wide. Oh, goodness me. And that's the worst thing you could ask for. Teammate on teammate contact as Dorey is turned by Delmont there. And I think that was the 3 wide situation coming to haunt Dorey, who was on the outside. And that's the horrible bit, of course, when you're in a 3 wide. If you're on the outside of a corner under braking, everybody's going to understeer under braking as late as possible. And it's the driver on the outside who, if anyone's going to go deep, he or she is going to feel it under braking, and Dorey, with that contact with Delmont, falls all the way down to P8 here, and this is not the way he wants it to go. Now the good news for him is his main rival in attendance today of Gavan Gardener is behind him, still 1 place behind him, so for Dorey it's not damage at the moment. If anything, it's only working to his advantage, but if Gardener could get into this fight for P2, he's not far off it. He may just have an opportunity here to really take a big swipe at Jamie Dorey at a critical juncture, but as they head on through, we look back to the battle for the podium in the Pro-Am class, and we can see that Tom Delaney here trying to chase down what is Matt Emmons just in front of him. Emmons has found his way on through off camera as they make the way in towards turn number 4, and as they come charged on down, you can see just behind Aerosmith taking a look to the inside. They're not quite able to do it. Josh Brown a bit further back with Lee Horn between them. Lee Horn a lap down after visiting the pits on the opening couple of laps. We've had the retirement of John Burnham. We've also got Gazwell and Mark Sykes in the pits due to incidents on the opening lap. We will try and give you a replay of those in the near future, with so much going on at the moment, and we try to focus on the live action. And speaking of live action, we look all the way back up to P3 here, and Adam Delmont, well, as we ride on board the gearbox, I think this is what tells the story, because you can see that's not just 1 car behind him. It looks like it's 1 car, but then you see a glimpse of another. That's Wayne Douglas and Rob McGregor all hunting after the P3 driver Delmont, and behind them you've got Andrew Pike and also Jamie Dorey as they make the way out of 3 and back onto the Wellington straight. Now as they do it, we're not even quite at the halfway point of this race. We've still got plenty of time to go, and that gives you an indication as well of just how much can happen in such a short period here at Silverstone National, and why it's a circuit on the calendar. And as they make their way into the braking zone, McGregor looks up the inside of Douglas. Douglas leaves the door open there. 90 will have the cut back to the inside into turn number 5, and Rob McGregor there gets elbowed out a little bit of contact between the two of them, but no harm meant. I think that's just the way it went through the corner, and as they exit on out to complete the lap right now, Adam Delmont will be grateful that Douglas is having to do more work holding off McGregor than he is having to chase down Delmont, as Delmont will be able to use this to calm himself down a little bit and try and break away. As they head into turn number 1 once again, Delmont right now really having to battle to try and break away from the pursuing pack, but indeed that is a whole group of what is effectively 8 drivers in hot pursuit. We see running a bit wide there, right at the back of the picture as he chases after John Higgins Jr. That is Matthew Addy, who is trying to find his way into that battle to be inside the top 10, but he's not quite close enough to make the move on Higgins Jr. at the moment. Instead, he's having to wait here as we reach the halfway mark of this race, come the end of the Wellington straight for the pair. But as they make the way on down the straight, we look back here to Paul Scott, and well, the NXTGEN Racing Blue driver is at the head of the Pro-Am pack. He's cleared all the battling, but there's one driver he hasn't cleared, and it would happen to be his main rival, the championship of Ben Bennyworth, as they make the way down into turn number 4, and Bennyworth, they're locking up on the brakes a little bit. You can see the wobble at the front end of the car where he's had to release the brakes to prevent them from fully locking up, and in doing so he's gone a little bit deep. He's been able to keep the car together, and as they make the way out to turn number 5 and up towards the start finish line once more, we ride on board here with the Audi driver chasing after fellow Audi driver of Scott in front, as as they make the way onto the next lane. And the question is Pennyworth going to go for the move now, or does he just simply wait and play the long game here? 9. If he finishes behind Paul Scott in this race, it doesn't hurt him too much. It only does a tiny bit of damage and does not cut out his ability to take the championship win here today. But as they make the way down towards turns 2 and 3, we'll have to wait to see whether Pennyworth is going to play the strategic game or whether he's going to be a bit more short-termist in his approach and go for every single win. But given the fact when we spoke to Pennyworth last time out, he did seem to be quite the tactical thinker, and I think the strategy will be on the cards to play it smart. But right now, when you've got an opportunity to battle side by side down the Wellington Straight, you go for it, and that's exactly what Pennyworth's doing as they head down towards turn number 4. He's on the inside versus Scott. Scott goes later on the brakes around the outside, hoping to get to the inside for turn number 5, and as they come on through, Scott locks up slightly, but Pennyworth has still got the Next Gen Racing blue driver on his inside as they come through the right-hander of 5, and as they battle their way on out here, it's going to be the 2 prime contenders making the way to the timeline. They've still got another 8.5 minutes to go. We're by no means done yet in race number 1, and as they come on through to go across the line, well, it's Scott who's got his nose ahead, but right now Pennyworth is trying to size up a long run around the outside to cut it back to the inside here on the exit of 1, and as they come on out at the moment, well, Paul Scott holds on. Meanwhile, up front, we've got a bit of, oh my good lord, what exactly has happened to Andrew Pine from TSRC? We do not know exactly, but what we do know, he's had a massive whack to the wall, and I think Rob McGregor has also been involved in some sort of contact. I think we've got multiple drivers. Is that Jamie Dorey as well, with a very crumpled left-hand side panel of the car, indeed the door, and I think that left-hand suspension is not looking good at both front and rear. Something has gone on, and we're about to find out exactly what has happened, but I can tell you with all of that, right now Mikey Doble still leads by now 6.5 seconds. It's then Kieran Sharp in P2, Delmont in P3, Wayne Douglas P4. And now the big battle at the front is between John Higgins Jr. and Gavan Gardener, who both seized on this, but we now take a look back at exactly what happened. Well, this was only moments ago. It was 3 wide there between Dorey, Rob McGregor, and oh my good lord, and that's Pike there. Well, there was contact between the 3, and Jamie Dorey tried to survive it, but look at that front left tyre. You can see where it's almost come off the rim there from the contact. And as we take another look back at exactly what happened, well, we looked to one of our other cameras, and there was contact there between Pike and McGregor, and then Dorey and McGregor came together. It's almost as if there was pinballing of what's Rob McGregor's car, just simply knocked about from left, right, and centre. And well, that's going to be a difficult one for the shooters to dissect. I can tell you that now, because we really do need the preceding context. Was there some more knocking about between the drivers in the build-up to that? We're not quite sure, but that seems to be what's happened. The short answer is the 3 have tried to make their way down towards turn number 2, and in the end, a 3 wide has not worked out. And speaking of working out, meanwhile, Adam Delmont is trying to find his way and work it around what is Kieran Sharp on the inside in towards turn number 6. They go now, but you can see here that with Delmont on the offensive, side by side they go all the way up towards turn number 1, and on to the brakes. We continue to look at these live pictures now. Delmont coming on through. Now, can he make this count, really, for Doble and Delmont here? P1, P2 would be huge. Of course, Dorey a long way down. In fact, Jamie Dorey, I think, is a lap down now, effectively, with the damage he's picked up. And Delmont defending here into 2 and 3, going into Maggots. And as they make the way through, look at Wayne Douglas. They're cutting his way back to the inside. Contact between all 3 drivers there. Brief kiss of the doors between Douglas and Delmont. Kieran Sharp a bit of a harsher bump on the rear end to Delmont's car, but the point is they still all survive and head down the Wellington Straight. Meanwhile, in the battle for the prime lead, it's not holding off. They are continuing. It's not subsiding. Ben Pennyworth is now on the outside in the run down the Wellington Straight, but Paul Scott's got the overspeed here in the run towards turn number 4. And as they make the way onto the anchors here once again, we see Paul Scott comes on through and Pennyworth already fighting back, but being very smart with car placement and deciding to really tease out these moves left, right and centre, looking for those cutbacks, looking for those switchback moves, and trying to get Paul Scott, I think, into a bit of a flustered mental state here, where come the end of the race, the only thing that Paul Scott's going to be thinking about is which way Pennyworth's going to come at him when it really matters on that final lap. But as they head on towards turn number 1, both drivers here side by side again into Scott's corner, but Pennyworth deciding to go for that inside line on corner exit in order to give himself the run to the inside through turns 2 and 3. And we've seen this before. We see it again as they make the way down towards the braking zone. Pennyworth holds the run around the outside of 2, onto the inside, onto the brakes in turn number 3. And look behind Andrew Pike trying to squeeze his way on through, but there Paul Scott cutting off his nose and saying, no, one's enough. I'm not having both come up the inside, as they make the way down the straight. And as they come charging down this time around, Paul Scott getting a better run out the corner initially, but it does look so bogging down a little bit, as we can see Pennyworth being squeezed there to turn number 4. Paul Scott really wants this all over in terms of getting ahead, but there's no way, I think, to get Bennyworth out of this fight. I think it's going to be all the way to the finish as we see Bennyworth trying to hold around the outside of turn number 5. Paul Scott holds the inside, but Bennyworth will get the better power deployment on corner exit, and now Paul Scott's got the challenge of Pike behind him as they make the way through turn number 6 here. 5 minutes to go plus the final lap, and as they come into turn number 1 now, we've got a bit of smoke up in front. I wonder if there's a, well, I think there's a driver off just ahead. I think that's John Higgins Jr. in fact, who's just been in a major shunt, but things do calm down, and we have the opportunity to take a look back at what's happened here to John Higgins Jr., who only moments ago were heading down towards turn number 1, and well, oh goodness me, and that looks to be contact between Higgins Jr. and Gavan Gardener. Now, was it latency contact or netcode contact as we refer to it? Well, we ride on board here with Gavan Gardener, the Verona Motorsport driver. You can see he was trying to go to the outside, and well, now that does look to be one that's not as straightforward as it would seem. You would think on first look that Gardner's just simply hit the rear end of what is Higgins Jr., and that's the story, which he has made contact by looks of things based on the replay cameras as we return to our live pictures. But I wonder there whether Higgins Jr. had already unsettled the car to a degree through making the little jig to the left and the right in trying to cover off Gardner, and therefore when Gardner made the contact in the rear end of the HSR machine, that's what sent it around and terminally to the wall on the run down towards turn number 1. But John Higgins Jr. on his return having a difficult race number 1, but there's still 2 more to go. And meanwhile, as we return to these live pictures, Pike right now really fighting hard with Paul Scott, and Paul Scott losing out as we can see there that Bennyworth is just running off into the distance, and Pike proving frustrated as we can see Paul Scott really flashing his lights furiously here, and this is the problem for him, the fact that he's got a driver in front who's not actually a part of this championship, who right now he would argue is preventing him from hunting down the championship leader in class. Meanwhile, we look from them to Gavan Gardener here, who's battling side by side with Matthew Addy in the run for P3 in the pro class here. Addy trying to go around the outside with 2.5 minutes to go by the time they get to the end of this lap, and as they make their way down towards turn number 5, we can see that Gardener holding on, but the Verona Motorsport driver doing everything and to hold on firm at this time. But Matthew Addy, to be fair, just teeing up, I think at the moment, building up, but we know that Gardener can really make that Audi as wide as possible. As we say hello to Shane Abbott there in the YouTube chat, giving his perspective on the Higgins-Gardner incident and having similar findings like ourselves there in terms of being a bit difficult to see from the cameras we had available, but there was a little bit of that moving around from Higgins, and we'll have to wait and see what the stewards are calling that if it is reported. But meanwhile, what we can report in the meantime is that Gardner right now under a lot of pressure from Addy, and goes a bit deep then to turn number 3, but to be fair, you can go deep into Maggots and then get the run out onto Aintree very comfortably, and look at the Audi go there. That is only about 150 metres of quarter exit, but in that space, that is how the Audi gets the gap open. It just simply has the power, and when it's deployed, Gardener is able to break away. But meanwhile, we look from him back to Paul Scott, who continues to try and find his way through. In fact, he's been passed by Rob McGregor as Paul Scott, whilst he's been battling with Pike, and now McGregor coming on through here. And I think at this point, Paul Scott may just be a little bit frustrated and decide to back it off before he starts to see red, which is understandable. We've still got 2 more races to go as we briefly do lose Paul Scott there, and that's just a bit of a connectivity issue. We hope that's not a sign of an engine blowout coming, what we have called an equivalent of an engine blowout or a disconnection with only 1.5 minutes on the clock. But as they make the way all the way out towards turn number 1, we do see Adam Delmont here still behind Wayne Douglas as they make the way up towards turn number 3, and I think there has been a bit of an exchange between these two as we take a look back at exactly what's happened. Well, Delmont was behind Kieran Sharp in the run up towards turn number 4, and as they made the way on the brakes here, Adam Delmont in, of course, the grey NXTGEN racing machine versus the black, grey and red TSRC machine. Wayne Douglas there, again getting it wrong at turn number 4, going overly deep, and then, well, now you could just see Kieran Sharp had nowhere to go other than deep into the corner, I think, having to react to Wayne Douglas being so slow at the corner, and that's how Delmont moved up into P3. But as we return to live pictures now, only 30 seconds left on the clock, and that's how Delmont's made his way up into the overall top 3 as they come all the way onto the final lap they will turn. But meanwhile, whilst they're heading into turn number 1, I can tell you that Mikey Doble is already down at turn number 2 and 3. But meanwhile, a little bit further back, John Higgins Sr. here trying to go on the offensive versus Matt Evans for overall position as they come to the timeline to go onto their final lap, and as they charge on through, Higgins Sr. up the inside, Evans on the outside, and Evans, to be fair, gaining 11 places since the start of this race, starting from the back of the field. He won't complain of that. I don't think he'll begrudge that, given that's where he will start. Where he finishes will be be where he starts in race number 2. But meanwhile, one driver who has had it pleasant ever since the start and has just been able to run away whilst all the battling's gone on behind him. Here he is, it's Mikey Doble, and as he comes out of the final major corner here, it's just a run to the line. The checkered flag awaits him, and in race number 1 at Silverstone National, it is Mikey Doble from NXTGEN Racing Orange who takes the win as he crosses the line in the end, 10.5 seconds clear of the next driver in the field. Who's it going to be? Was they drag race the way to the line? It will be the guest driver privateer of Wayne Douglas in the 66 machine who takes P2 ahead of Adam Delmont, who completes the overall podium. Kieran Sharp in P4. Gavan Gardener just holds off Matthew Addy to the line, P5. Addy P6. Ben Bennyworth crosses the line. Your prime winner here in race number 1, P7, ahead of Andrew Pike, Rob McGregor P9, Paul Scott P10 completed the top 10, and it's John Higgins Senior who comes home best the rest in P11 ahead of Matt Emmons there in P12, and Mark Arrowsmith just beating Josh Brown to the line in P13. Josh Brown P14, Nigel Stott P15, and then Tom Delaney P16, the last of our drivers to finish on the lead lap. Well, those are all of our lead lap drivers finishing the race, but we do have a lot to unpick in terms of the very start of the race. We didn't get a chance to take a look back, given everything that's happened, but before we do take a look at those results, let's have a look at exactly what happened on the open laps. We have multiple drivers retire, and, well, let's go back through the replays. So as we take a look back to start, this was Lee Horn. Now there's what happened to Mark Sykes early on, and Lee Horn with him. Goodness me. Will we take a little bit of an earlier look back at what exactly happened, and we try to find Lee Horn and all of that. So this is riding on board here with Lee Horn. Now watch Mark Sykes in the light green Veloster in front on the right there. You'll see they're coming through. There's contact with John Higgins Jr. And then as Lee Horn tries to take evasive action, he just gets collected by Mark Sykes, who's already a passenger in the Veloster. Both drivers there being picked off together. And then a little bit later on, there was more contact here in the run down towards turn number 2. In fact, that's multiple drivers. That's Josh Brown being sent off into the distance. And also, I think there we had Gaz Will, who went a very long way. In fact, I think missed his braking point completely. We take a look at what happened to them. We see here, this was exactly what happened between the pair, and well, as Gaz Will came down towards the corner, I think he just missed his braking point, and we're going to see Josh Brown very shortly get sent across our camera, when in fact he's just off camera right now. Well, Will just got it wrong under braking and decided to throw the car off the road and to the barrier there for safety, but Josh Brown meanwhile really got picked up early in all of that. We take a look at what happened from Brown's perspective meanwhile. And from Brown's perspective, as he made his way down towards the corner, heading in towards turns 2 and 3. Bit of a side-by-side there with Paul Scott, and then onto the brakes he went for Maggots, and now here, well, on that inside, and well, there was contact there with the Honda, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken. Try to remember which Honda that is. I think that was not Delaney. I think that was Nigel Stott being caught up there, but Nigel Stott clipping Josh Brown, and that's what happened on the open lap, and all those contacts we did see in the end between our drivers and where it all went wrong. But speaking of things going right, meanwhile, as we return to our live pictures here, let's take you through those race results from race number 1, as they're now in. Of course, subject to any insurance inquiries, here are the results for race 1 of round 9 of the NXTCC for 2022. Mikey Doble taking the opening win here today at Silverstone National by 10.5 seconds ahead of Wayne Douglas in P2. Congratulations to Wayne Douglas on his debut as a guest driver for taking second place. Adam Delmont in P3 there, completing the overall podium. Kieran Sharp P4 ahead of Gavan Gardener P5, and then Matthew Addy P6. Of course, Doble, Delmont and Garner will make up the pro podium there. Congratulations to the trio. Matthew Addy just missing out, but taking the fight to Gavan Gardener come the end of the race then. Is that a sign of what's to come? Ben Bennyworth, P7 overall, translating into the win in the Pro-Am class, and whilst he had to come from a long way back to do it, given his difficult qualifying session, he found his way past his peers, and particularly Paul Scott, in a brilliant set of side-by-side battles over multiple laps, but he was able to come away the victor, with Andrew Pike there in P8, Rob McGregor P9, and then Paul Scott P10, and I can imagine Paul Scott from NXTGEN Racing Blue quite frustrated in the battle he had with TSRC's Andrew Pike, and probably feeling as though, with the driver, being the guest driver, he shouldn't have been in that battle between himself and Bennyworth. Best of the rest there in P11, John Higgins Senior, and then Matt Emmons P12 overall, just ahead of Mark Arrowsmith, and that means our Pro-Am podium consists of Bennyworth, Scott and Emmons, with Mark Arrowsmith P13, Josh Brown P14, and then Nigel Stott in 15th. Outside the top 15, not to be forgot about, Tom Delaney, our last finisher on the lead lap, with Jamie Dorey, with that instant that we saw between himself and a couple of other drivers, including Rob McGregor, and also what was Andrew Pike, finishing all the way down in P17, not the way he wanted to start off his day, that's for certain. John Higgins Jr. in P18 for that contact between himself and Gavan Gardener, a difficult one to dissect, and then P19 Lee Horn, John Burnham P20, Gaswell P21, and last but not least, after losing out on the opening lap, Mark Sykes P22, and that's how all of our drivers are going to line up for the purposes of race number 2. Well, those are the results from race 1, ladies and gentlemen, and now we'll be back very shortly in approximately 5 minutes time for the build up to race number 2. Don't go anywhere. If the race of race number 1 is anything to go by, the ante's only going to be upped as we make our way for another 20 minutes of racing here at Silverstone National. We'll be back shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, but it looks though not without a slight technical hitch, which we are just trying to resolve very quickly in the background. I think it is one of those situations whereby a recent update to Windows operating systems has slightly caused a little bit of trouble with regards to some of the iRacing graphic settings. And in fact, we will just have to get that resolved. We will be back very briefly to resolve this technical issue, so that way we can get a green flag and go racing within the next 5 minutes. Apologies, we'll be back again very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the slight delay in returning there. It does seem as though a recent update to what is the Windows operating system on which we're running this broadcast has led to some slight technical hiccups with regards to how iRacing is presented to us as a broadcaster, but we've been able to find a workaround to those, so as a result we are back and ready to go racing once again. And well, what a brilliant race number one we saw. Plenty of racing action up and down the field, and as our drivers make the way on around now, it is one of those situations for all of our drivers whereby after a very fast and frantic race number one, they've now got the challenge of trying to one-up themselves and indeed do as good, if not better, in race number two. Now, how will the grid be set in race number two, I hear you ask? Well, it will be, as we said earlier, just set on the results of race number one. So whoever took the win in race one, that being Mikey Doble, will start on pole and we work our way down the order. But that adds that additional conundrum, of course, for our drivers of they want to finish inside the top 6 as a minimum, if not aim to at least finish inside the top 12 to be eligible to be part of that top order reverse grid. Now, whether it's top 6 all the way through to top 12, they'll only know when we do the live draw, but the point being the stakes are on the line. There's a little bit of probability in there as well, and that means for our drivers it's all about trying to deliver as much as possible. But indeed, one of the big talking points that we did see in race number one is that our guest drivers were not afraid of mixing things up, whether it was Andrew Pite and Kieran Sharp from the Sim Racing Collective, or indeed Wayne Douglas from the team, of course, the privateer team, as he makes his way out of turn 3 and down towards 4. All of them absolutely mixing up, taking the fights left, right and centre, and will we see that continue here in race number 2? Well, we'll find out, but one driver who did not have a pleasant race number 1, Jamie Dorey, in the end, losing out massively in that 3 wide moment in the run down towards turn number 2, but as he parks up and heads to the pits, all of our drivers will very shortly be recalled to the pit lane, and then we'll make the way back out onto circuit for the gridding process for race number 2, and that's coming any moment soon as all our drivers are now ready to go racing. So as our drivers make the way to the grid, let's take you through that grid for race number 2. Lining up then in the following order for the second race of round 9 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship of 2022 at Silverstone National. We can see there Mikey Doble lined up on pole once again for Next Gen Racing Orange, joined this time by the privateer of Wayne Douglas starting in P2. Adam Delmont and Kieran Sharp line up on row number 2, the Next Gen Racing Orange driver ahead of the TSRC driver, and then we have behind them on row number 3 Gavan Gardener from Vrano Motorsport battling his way out to P5 versus Matthew Addy, who's in P6 for Next Gen Racing Green. On row 4, we have the Pro-Am pole sitter of Ben Bennyworth from Prime Stacking with Solar Racing, fighting his way up in race number 1 to P7, Andrew Pike alongside, and then we have Rob McGregor and Paul Scott to round off the top 10 in row number 5. John Higgins Sr. and Matt Emmons line up on the 6th row. Behind them, we have the combination of Mark Arrowsmith and Josh Brown, with Nigel Stock and Jamie Dorey on row number 8, John Higgins Jr. and Lee Horn on row number 9, and Gazwell Mark Sykes on row number 10. But we're about to go racing, ladies and gentlemen, and here are the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the second race of today as Mikey Doble looks to make it 2 out of 2, but Wayne Douglas is not going to make it easy for him as they make the way down towards turn number 1. But already you can see Adam Delmont going for the sweep around the outside, but Douglas gets the elbows out early here. He's not going to fall over and let the move go as they make the way down towards 2 and into 3. But onto the brakes, they're going in the rear of the picture. We've got Arrowsmith there in contact with, I believe that's Jamie Dorey. Well, Jamie Dorey's race is only going from bad to worse already within the space of 1 corner on the opening lap. But meanwhile, looking up at this battle inside the top 5, we can see there a bit of a scuffle further back between Garner and Bennyworth. In fact, not Garner and Bennyworth, between Paul Scott and Bennyworth, I should say. Meanwhile, as they make the way down the Wellington straight, Garner is on the offensive versus Andrew Pike, and indeed wants to take the point and prove the point back versus Pike as they make the way through turn number 4. With Pike there making 2 places at the start, and Garner having a bit of a slow launch, not quite hooking up with the launch control of the Audi RS3 this time around. But as they come out to turn number 5 and onto the start finish straight here through turn 6 of Woodcock Corner, you can see already Bennyworth trying to make early ground, and this is critical for Bennyworth because Paul Scott has not lost 2 places, has started and staying where he started. But as they make the way onto the next lap, if Bennyworth can put more and more drives between himself and his rival, then he's got free real estate to play with as they make the way onto the later stages of this race. But as everybody charges on down towards turn at number 3, we look back up towards the battle for P3 here. Kieran Sharp on the outside, Wayne Douglas on the inside. They're side by side all the way through the corner. Behind them, John Higgins Sr. gaining ground here, now going on the offensive versus Bennyworth. He's made his way past teammate Rob McGregor of HSR, and as they head on through to make the way down the Wellington straight here, Higgins Sr. is not holding back any bunches. He's going all in, and look at this, trying to size up Bennyworth as they make the way into turn 4. But Bennyworth defends hard here. He knows he needs to hold those positions, takes a bit of grass on the apex of turn 4. Unsells the car, and Higgins Sr. there just has to hold his line. As you can see, Bennyworth absolutely on off the brakes there. The brake lights flashing left, right and centre as if to show that he's trying to push as hard as possible. But meanwhile, behind the other HSR driver here, Rob McGregor, well, he's got an absolutely difficult task of keeping always the combination of Paul Scott and Matt Emmons behind him. We won't be feeling too comfortable with this as they make the way in towards turn number 1. As you can see, Paul Scott right now wants to get the move on, but meanwhile Matt Emmons is not giving in, and for the simple reason here that Matt Emmons really wants to get his big points. Oh my good lord, and somebody's just gone straight off into the wall, and well, Jamie Dorey's gone wide, but I think there was another car that just went straight off. I'm not exactly sure who it was, but we've had a car that's literally gone straight on, and meanwhile there's Paul Scott going very deep as Lee Horn is now trying to get himself back into the race. But this is not the way it wants to go. I think it was Jamie Dorey who went over. I think it was Nigel Stock who went straight on, unless I'm mistaken. We'll have to take a look back at that very shortly, but that was a very odd moment. Meanwhile, Addy versus Pike here side by side in the battle for P5 as they headed towards turn number 5 once again, and ahead of them, well, Wayne Douglas and Delmont here are still scrapping for P2, and Doble is already 3 seconds clear almost by the time they get to the end of this lap. So after 3 laps, it is Mikey Doble who leads ahead of Wayne Douglas in P2, who literally is making that Hyundai Elantra so wide as they come in, and there's contact, and Douglas is into the wall. Well, that's not the way I think he expected the car to make contact with the wall, but iRacing does get it a little bit wrong in terms of contact sometimes, but that's a disaster for Wayne Douglas, and contact there with Delmont. Now, was it a similar bit of contact, much like what we saw between McGregor and Gardener earlier on? We'll have to take a look back at that shortly, but Delmont has cleared the driver who seems to be frustrating him for so long, but now he's got another contender behind of Kieran Sharp here, and Sharp Sharp is not going to hold back when he tries to make a move as they head up towards turn number 4. But as they head into the braking zone here, Delmont reacting immediately and making sure to cover off the inside run, but he outbrakes himself, and Kieran Sharp here comes on back, puts on the outside, and now Delmont's got the license here to slightly lean the car out if he so desires, as long as he gives Sharp some space to go racing, and Delmont indeed gets back ahead. Meanwhile, behind them, you can see that Addy now finding himself falling backwards towards a battle between Pike and Gardner, as it's a three-way fight for P4 as they head up towards turn number 1 once again. But in the scramble here, Delmont holding off Kieran Sharp. Meanwhile, Matthew Addy trying to make Pike and Gardner fight one another once more. As we see Pike then drifting his way through turn number 1 and catching the car. Just a bit too much speed carried through into the corner. Gavan Gardener now will have an opportunity to just drag race his way past the Honda driver. On the left is the Audi driver as he makes his way onto the brakes, but there's contact between the two. And well, there's contact there between Pike and Gardner. Now, did Pike turn into Gardner? It would be suggested that may have been what happened there based on the camera angle we saw, but they both survived it, albeit both of them with a whack to the car. And as we see Bennyworth now getting into this fight for P6, well, the Pram leader here does not need to make any moves of position. All he's simply got to do is continue to hold on to lead, but he's going to go for moves here as Bennyworth. He wants overall points. He wants to gain more place in the overall standings, and good on the man for going for it. But at the same time, he's got to be mindful here. That's not what he needs to do in order to seal the championship in the Prime class today. And you can see here Higgins Senior now trying to creep up the inside into turn number 6 as they make the way through the long right-hander and now towards another lap. But as they come across that timeline, Higgins Senior still fighting for position here. He's going all in, and it's a good gamble to go for. Bennyworth finds himself on the outside and runs very wide there, and running that wide, he may have incurred a slowdown, which he'll have to take later on this lap within a certain period of time. Meanwhile, as they head on down to the braking zone here into Maggots, we can see also Rob McGregor coming on through, trying to make it HSR, getting a 2-for-1 special as they come through turns 2 and 3, and now down towards 4. But McGregor on that inside line as they head through the left-hander and down and through towards the Wellington Straight they go. And again, McGregor just not able to come on through as he finds that Bennyworth is frustrating him as they head in towards turn number 4. Higgins Senior's got on through, but McGregor stays put. Further back, Lee Horn here trying to put some pressure on Josh Brown. The two next-gen racing drivers coming up against one another. Lee Horn looking on the inside. Brown goes a little bit deep into turn number 5, opens up the door there, and Lee Horn's going to try and capitalise. You can see it was the case there that Josh Brown tried to turn back in, but found a face full of Lee Horn on his inside on his right-hand door panel, and therefore he's had to reopen the steering wheel as they head through the final corner and on towards the next lap. And that is only 6.5 minutes of racing so far. Still plenty more to go here. You'd think we've already had 20 minutes, but no, we're not even halfway through, and that's what Silverstone National does. It just generates plenty of racing action, corner after corner. And speaking of that racing action, well, Matthew Addy still battling with Andrew Pike here for P4. Pike's gone the long way round to try and get this place off of Addy as they make the way out to turn 3, and Matthew Addy falls behind, and then John Higgins Senior now trying to make his way on through as well, and Higgins Senior just making the pass on Gavan Gardener, and we take a look back at how that happened. Well, this was moments ago in the run towards turn 3, and Gavan Gardener going deep, and I think the contact that Gardener had earlier on has really hurt the car. I think Gardener's struggling a little bit right now for right-hand corners. The car just does not want to hook up, and that's why he went deep there. Once again, that contact, of course, of Andrew Pike earlier at the exact same corner where the drivers went into the corner, and there was a big hit to the left-hand side of Gavan Gardener's car, which, given right-hand corners really abuse the left-hand tyres, it is the way of the machinery that would potentially link up and make sense. But as they head on through onto another lap, we look to live pictures here. Our drivers come roaring on through, and as they do, we can see Ben Bennyworth a little bit further behind, now settling down, I think, and realising he doesn't need to gain any more overall places. His main rival, Paul Scott, is 3 places behind. As Bennyworth can keep the 2 HSR machines of McGregor and Higgins Jr. behind, he will be well on his way with 2 wins out of 2 to be sealing the championship with a round to spare. But as they head on through up the Wellington Straight towards turn number 4, we look forward to Adam Delmont here in P2, and after clearing Kieran Sharp, it does look as though Delmont now feeling a bit more comfortable as they head through turn number 5 and on to the next lap. But meanwhile, Matthew Addy, he's still battling with Andrew Pike as they head out to the corner. It's side by side now in the run all the way through 6 and on towards another lap. Addy's getting the better run. He's got shorter run to turn number 1 on that inside line, but Pike's going to try and hold it round the outside if he can, or will he back it out the last one and go for the cut back to the inside? I think Pike's doing the latter here as Addy's made to carry all the speed through the corner. He goes a bit deep, however, and runs wide, and now Pike's coming on back. But look behind them there, John Higgins Sr. also looking at this battle and thinking he can potentially gain 2 places and move up to P4. Pike defends hard here on the apex of 3, and as they come through the right-hander, well, Addy's still there as they make the way on out, but the challenge is now for Matthew Addy. Can he find his way around the outside to inside in the run up towards turn number 4? Well, it will be a very difficult one for him to do, but in return, if he can make this count, it would work out for the better, because right now he's got a big problem, which is this man, Higgins Sr., who's going to look for the move here as Addy goes a bit deep at 4, but Higgins Sr. on the outside here into 5 as they come on through the right-hander, and Higgins Sr.'s been right on board with the HSR driver here, looking to go on the offensive, and we know the one thing that this Elantra is good at is straight line speed as he makes his way up the inside through Woodcock corner. He's on the inside of Addy into turn number 1. Can he make the move count here as they head onto the brakes? And you can see there, Higgins Sr. on the left, Addy on the right, and as they come on through, Higgins Sr. gains the place and he covers off Addy very well there. But he gets the car stopped on apex and now brings it over immediately to the right hand side to say to Addy, you've had your fun playing with Pike, now it's my turn, as they make the way into the braking zone for Maggots. Behind them, Gavan Gardener also trying to get into the mix here, and Gardener's not out of the fight yet, and of course with Jamie Dorey all the way down in P12 and having to really recover in this race after early instance for Jamie Dorey at this point. It is one of those situations for him. Race 1 has not gone at all well. Race number 2 is not going his way. Gardener hasn't picked up a win in race number 1, but he will feel as though any points he gets now are a huge win, a huge bonus, and it means that it sets himself up nicely to really be in the hunt in the season finale at Brands Hatch Grand Prix next week, and that's what Gardener's got to do. He's got to clear this battle between Addy and Higgins Sr. If he does, it sets him up with a podium in the Pro class in this race, and that means the points will keep on pouring in. But as they make the way across the timeline, half the race complete, half to go, plus the final lap, they head into turn number 1, and Gardener looks to the inside there into 1. He doesn't go for it, however. He knows that given the high attrition rate that we've seen so far at Silverstone National with contact between drives, and indeed he's been in those contact situations as well in race number 1, he cannot afford to be in major contact, because a penalty, if he was to be accruing a penalty post-race from the stewards, that would hurt him just as much as being taken off circuit today, and that's why it's a delicate balancing act when you are the chaser, when you're the hunter in the championship. You can't get it wrong. And as they make the way on down the Wellington straight, just look at this, we have got over 10 drivers separated by only about 3 to 4 seconds in the long run from Pike all the way back to Lee Horn in P13. That's P4 to P14, and as they all come through turns 4 and 5, this time McGregor looks at a move here versus Gardner, but he can't quite find it. Instead he has to wait, but now we can see the pinch is really starting to hurt. Matthew Addy really starting to back this field up into one another, and that's just Addy delivering his pace and not quite running at the pace of the others. I think as we ride on board the gearbox of the Next Gen Racing green driver, and you can see there the loud and proud grille of the Audi RS3 of what is Gavan Gardener behind as they make the way up towards turns 2 and 3 this time around. Well, from them we must look a bit further up, because we can see Andrew Pike here still having to hold off of what is John Higgins Sr., but he goes deep and Higgins Sr. has to back out, and the problem is the concertina effect from Higgins Sr. backing out there when he could have looked up the inside, but he would have taken Andrew Pike clear off the road there with the angle of the car. Look at how Addy now has got Gavan Gardener scrambling over the back of him, and surely Gardner's not going for 2 wide into turn 4. Well, no, 3 wide. I was going to say no, he doesn't, but Matthew Addy meanwhile does try to go 2 wide with John Higgins Sr., and as they come through turn 4 into 5 through the long right hander here, Matthew Addy literally having to try and defend and consolidate this position, but of course the Elantra has that power out of the corners, and Gardner's going to know about that now with Rob McGregor building up the speed as they come through Woodcott and up towards turn number 1. But as they head in towards the braking zone here, Rob McGregor doing everything to defend to the inside versus Gardner. He's got his nose just in line with the nose of Gardner, and as they head through the right hander, a little bit of contact. I think there's a tiny bit of netcode contact between the two cars. It didn't look as though the doors touched, although one driver may have opened the steering wheel up there in order to avoid the contact. I think Gardner may have tried to avoid the contact, but Rob McGregor comes on through and takes P7, P5 in class at a very important point in this race now, because with Addy started to get very antsy versus John Higgins Sr., Gardner wants to be there, but McGregor now is actually providing a little bit of rear guard for his teammate as they head down the back straight. But as they come charging down into the braking zone here into what is turn number 4, once again you can see Addy trying to go round the outside of Higgins Sr., but is he going to be able to? No, there's contact between the two of them, and it's a disaster for Higgins Sr., who just catches the car there on the outside line. And as they make the way out to turn number 5, well, I think Addy there, it's going to be, from our camera angle, it looks like a bit of a slam dunk contact on the back Addy to Higgins Senior, but of course, that's just one perspective of it, but Higgins Senior will not be too best pleased with that, but very close racing between them as they all come roaring into turn number 1 once again. And if you're putting anything in the chat right now, trying to message us about the race, we do apologise, we can't see the chat. That's one of the limitations of the workaround we've had to use in order to make sure our graphics are not glitching out on iRacing, so sorry about that, but hopefully you're all enjoying the race action as Jamie Dorey goes overly deep into turn 3, and as he tries to bring it back together, up his inside goes Lee Horn. He's a fellow Next Gen Racing driver now. They're not in the same team, so they are encouraged to fight, of course, but I wonder here whether Lee Horn's going to try and seal the deal on the outside or whether Dorey's going to be given all the space on the inside as they make the way in towards turn number 4. It is the latter as Dorey regains that PE12, but that's not the kinds of mistakes that you want to be making right now, because this is only affording an advantage to Gardener, albeit as we see him, meanwhile in the Pro-Am Championship lead, Paul Scott battling up the inside of the Championship leader Ben Bennyworth, and he is keeping his dreams alive as they make the way through turn number 6 and onto another lap. Still 5.5 minutes to go as they head on down towards turn number 1, and into turn 1 they charge as they make the way on through, and Paul Scott right now is doing everything. He's throwing the kitchen sink at the situation here in order to beat Bennyworth, but the problem is, of course, Bennyworth doesn't need to win to steal that championship. He can finish right behind Paul Scott here and have it all said and done. The rest of the Prime fields are a little bit further back. Nigel Stock is in P14 as we see Stock here rolling his way on through with Josh Brown close behind. But meanwhile, we jump back to that battle inside the top 10. You can see Bennyworth there on the outside, letting Higgins Senior come through. I wonder if there's a bit of a slowdown there for Bennyworth due to track limits earlier on in the laps. He does seem to be peeling off some time, but Higgins Senior comes on through. We can see Paul Scott immediately trying to capitalise on the space being afforded to him on the inside of 4, but he'll put him on the outside of 5 as they come through the long right-hander as they make the way on out. Well, both drivers here still side by side in the run out the corner, and as they emerge, well, Paul Scott there having the door open. He's let Jamie Dorey on through. In fact, Jamie Dorey squeezing his way on through on the exit of 5, but for Paul Scott, well, it'll be one of those situations for him where it's going to be bittersweet right now, and he'll be hoping that Dorey can bring him back into the fight with Bennyworth. As you can see there, look at them running nose to tail here. Paul Scott is not having a good day at Silverstone, and it is showing in the body language of that Audi RS3. Meanwhile, at the front of this whole plethora of drives in this long train, you can see that Addy and McGregor coming together. I think McGregor there would argue he was squeezed. Addy would argue he was just taken at the corner, but as they make the way on out, they settle their differences, and now it's a drag race all the way down. It's 2 by 2. Hurrah, they come all the way out towards turn number 4. And Gardener on the inside here. I think Gardener's going to try and make it 3 wide. Or is he? No, he backs out and he reconsiders his options as he looks to hold of John Higgins Jr. here. And we can see McGregor's gone a little bit deep. Gardener's being tapped from front and rear. And as they make the way on through, well, Gardener there went for the opportunity, but it's not worked out. In fact, it's put him out wide, much like Higgins seen it only moments ago. And now he drops all the way back to P11. And look who he's dropped back alongside with only 3.5 minutes to go. It's Jamie Dorey who comes on through up the inside. It takes P10 off of Gavan Gardener, and now it's all gone through good to bad to disastrous for Gardener. There's not long left. There's not many places he can grab without a huge fight. And as they make the way through turn 1 and down towards 2, Lee Horn watching from the rear here, battling with Paul Scott still. The challengers in the championships right now are being muscled out of the way, and the championship leaders by comparison, well, they're not having an easy time of it, but they're having a better time of it. And meanwhile, speaking of having a difficult time, Matthew Addy, well, he's held onto this P5 for so long, and now he's got the entirety of HSR breathing down his neck. But that's not just Rob McGregor, that's also John Higgins Jr. That's also just a bit behind John Higgins Sr. And as they come into turn number 4 here, McGregor's going to try and hang it all the way to the inside of 5. He gets the door open. Can he force it all the way open for his teammate of Higgins Jr. as well? As they come through, he does look at Higgins Sr. also trying to get on the mix, but he goes a bit deep out the corner. But meanwhile, Higgins Jr. now flashing his lights, I think, trying to say to Rob, thank you very much, I'll take it from here. And as they make the way across the timeline, 2.5 minutes still to go on the clock here. And we can see a flash of lights there from Addy. He is not best pleased with the way he's had the door opened up on him at turn number 5. And as they come out of the corner and now down towards turn 3, still side by side all the way in the run. Bennyworth, meanwhile, following through and battling side by side with Higgins Senior here as they come onto the brakes. Addy still being squeezed out there by John Higgins Jr. I think with the race as close it is right now, you can understand why there's a lot of contact between them, but they're keeping it as civil as they possibly can, which is fantastic to see. This is what touring cars are all about. about as they make their way down the Wellington straight. Meanwhile, further back, Josh Brown has just found his way past Nigel Stock for P3 in the Prime class when it's P14. We'll take a look back at that very shortly. And in fact, we're taking a look back now. This was only months ago. I think Nigel Stock's had a bit of an error off circuit. In fact, where is Nigel Stock? In fact, it's an off-track level Nigel Stock, a rare, uncustomy, unenforced error, and Nigel Stock losing on out. But as we return to the live pictures, Brown making his way around for one of his, a very limited number of podiums. I think it will be his maiden podium if he secures this P14. But we go back up through the field and look to the battle between McGregor and Higgins Jr. And right now, well, McGregor running on the final step of the pro podium, P5 overall. He's not got long to go, and he's doing everything in his power to try and hold on here, and Higgins Jr. behind him. I think HSR now started to try and get themselves into a triple. Well, it's P3 through to P5, but they've got Matthew Addy spoiling the concoction here with a minute to go, who's in P5. Higgins seated just behind him as they head down the back straight, but still there is not long remaining as they head on through, and as they come charging on down towards turn number 4. Well, further up the road, I can tell you that things have calmed down, but Addy looking up the inside to outside here into turn number 5, but the problem is, of course, when you're on that line, it means you go deep into 5, and Higgins Cedar tries to come for a bit of contact between the two of them as Mikey Douglas sets the fastest lap and goes on to the final lap, and well, Douglas just run off into the distance, I can tell you that much right now. But meanwhile, in the battle to be inside the pro top 5, Higgins Cedar is alongside Addy as they come into turn number 1. Onto the brakes they both go, and Higgins Cedar gets the move done, or does he? Addy's going to try and cover back. We can see there off circuit it's Mark Arrowsmith. He's a lap down in P17. He's staying well clear of this. The blue flags will be waving for an eternity with his pack coming on through, and Higgins Cedar holding on here. Addy looks to come back on the inside. It's a battle on the brakes, contact between the two of them, and Addy gets his nose on in there, and as they exit out, there's more contact as Addy is turned, and look at Jamie Dorey trying to close on up here as they make their way down the Wellington straight. But we do have to cut away briefly, ladies and gents, because he ran away with proceedings in race number 1, and as he comes out the final corners, he's going to take the checker flag again in race number 2. Your winner in race 2 is Mikey Doble from Next Gen Racing Orange as he crosses the line there by 8 seconds ahead of Adam Delmont, who comes across the line in P2. A solid drive from the Next Gen Racing Orange pair to make it a P1, P2, and then it will be Kieran Sharp P3 ahead of Andrew Pyatt P4. Congratulations to the TSRC drivers. And then in the long charge, it's McGregor ahead of Higgins Jr., followed by Higgins Sr. to complete the pro top 5. Matthew Addy P8 overall there, Jamie Dorey P9, Gavan Gardener P10, and then Ben Bennyworth has made it 2 wins out of 2 in the Prime class ahead of Lee Horn, Paul Scott P13, a very frustrated Paul Scott, I can imagine. Josh Brown at P14 there, making it, I believe that is Josh Brown's maiden podium in the series. Congratulations to him. And then Nigel Stock P15, Matt Emmons P16, and those are all of our drivers who finished on the lead lap. But just before we do take a look at the result, as we're waiting for those to be confirmed, we are going to take a look at what exactly happened on the opening lap, particularly for Jamie Dorey and Mark Arrowsmith. Well, as we take a look back, this was Jamie Dorey in particular, was in a bit of a squeeze there towards the rear of the field. And then, well, there's contact with Mark Arrowsmith, but that camera angle does not tell us the full story. We take another look back, and we ride on board here. Contact in issue with Arrowsmith, but there was contact there, and again, but it looks as though both drivers, they're trying to squeeze themselves into a space that was only one wide, and Dorey catching the car. Well, to be fair to Jamie Dorey, it all went wrong, but he was able to catch it enough, and Arrowsmith came back on the circuit a little bit later by comparison. Meanwhile, what happened to Gaz Will in the opening lap? Well, he was at the back of all this. Oh, goodness me, and taking a base of action there from Arrowsmith, and the car unsettled, and in the end, he's a passenger in his own car, and a whack to the wall there in very unfortunate circumstances, and he had to jump to the pits. Meanwhile, what happened to Mark Sykes as well, who had a very early retirement in all proceedings? Well, on to lap number 2 he went, and the car just snapped away from Mark Sykes. Now that is very uncommon. It's almost if he had a steering wheel failure there. The car just went straight on, and that was a disaster for Mark Sykes, who had to jump to the pits. And, well, for Wayne Douglas, I think the story was, well, we saw this happen live on camera, and we'll see it again in the run down towards turn number 2. Adam Delmont, a bit of a tap to the rear of Wayne Douglas, and Douglas getting hooked into the wall there. And, well, I don't think that's how physics works, but in this case, Wayne Douglas will say that's not how racing works, so he's been turned upside down, and in the end, having to jump to the pits. But as we now return to live pictures, let's take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after race number 2 there in round 9 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship for 2022, as hosted here today at Silverstone National, Mikey Doble making it 2 wins out of 2 ahead of Adam Delmont to make it a Next Gen Racing Orange 1-2, and Kieran Sharp on the podium there for the Sim Racing Collective or TSRC P3. Andrew Pyatt P4, the 2 guest drivers from TSRC putting on stellar performances, with Rob McGregor there P5 overall, and he will complete the pro podium. Congratulations to Mikey Doble, Adam Delmont and Rob McGregor for forming the pro podium. John Higgins Jr. and John Higgins Sr. then following after P6, P7. HSR making a triple there, P5 through to P7 overall, with Matthew Addy just ahead of Jamie Dorey, and then Gavan Gardener completing the top 10. Unfortunate for Gavan Gardener, looking so strong early on, but in the end contacts and battling with other drivers saw him drop down just behind Jamie Dorey, and that will hurt him in the run on through. Then it was Ben Bennyworth P11 taking the Pro-Am win ahead of Lee Horn at P12, Paul Scott P13, Josh Brown P14, Bennyworth, Scott and Brown making that Pro-Am podium, and then Nigel Stott P15 ahead of Matt Evans P16, Mark Arrowsmith P17, Wayne Douglas P18, and then coming on to our drivers who had those difficult retirements, Mark Sykes P19 and Gaz Wheel P20. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to cut to the commentary booth and conduct the reverse grid draw. So as we get ready to conduct the reverse grid draw, of course, welcome once again to the commentary booth. In my hands, you can see we do have the reverse grid draw lottery bowl. Within here is an equal number of sticky notes that have been cut up for the numbers 6 through to 12. I'm going to close my eyes, shuffle the tickets, and then pull one out at random and see what number we get. So as we make the shuffle, none have fallen out. In fact, one has fallen out, so I will shuffle that back in. But now we get ready to do the draw. Close my eyes again. Okay, well, we have a winner. And our reverse grid draw position for race number 3 will be... Well, I don't think it's going to be a 6 or a 9 today, but it's going to be the number 7. 7th place will be reverse grid pole here today for race number 3 at Silverstone National. And look into our timing sheet, that means that John Higgins Sr. will be on pole for race number 3, and he'll be joined on that front row by teammate and son, John Higgins Jr. Can HSR pull off a 1-2 here today and subvert the Next Gen Racing Orange 1-2 from race number 2? All that and more coming at you very soon. We'll be back in approximately 5 minutes' time. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, as we return then for the build-up to race number 3 today, on our schedule, of course, we've already had sprint race number 1 and sprint race number 2. Now we've only got one more race before we bring all the racing to a close at Silverstone National today in round 9 of the NXTCC. We can see all our drivers getting set once again. It's now making its way into the evening at Silverstone. Temperatures are coming down a little bit. Now an ambient temperature of 21 degrees centigrade, track temperature of 22 degrees centigrade. It'll get a little bit warmer on the track, there's no doubt about that, as our drivers turn more and more laps, particularly as we get racing. But we're now only 3 minutes away from going racing for the final time. And well, now it's all on the line for our drivers, for we have a top 7 reverse grid. And with reverse grids, of course, come a mix-up in the field. But the interesting part about it all is that our major contenders in the pro class of both Jamie Dorey and Gavan Gardener will not be within that reverse grid. They will be starting outside the top 7, so they will be starting where they finished in race number 2. And that means that for Jamie Dorey, as we saw briefly there in the chat before we've come back to the race in action, of course we can't see the chat at this time unfortunately due to a technical issue going on in the background, but it's a compromise we've got to make in order to be able to bring you all the racing action without hitches. We can tell you that Jamie Dorey right now is going to be putting aside the Colin Turk into approach and instead going all in and looking to deliver. And well, to his credit, we've seen that time and time again early on in the season where he went absolutely ruthless with the racing and delivered time after time, and now he's got to do it once more in order to make sure he emerges from today in the best possible position. But for John Higgins Sr., it's all about being up front, and can he and son John Higgins Jr., both of them starting on the front row, Senior being on pole, can he make it a win today? And could we see a repeat of what we saw all the way back in Knock Hill, where we saw the father-son combination in race number 3 of Higgins Jr. leading his father across the finish line? All that we will have to wait and find out with only 1.5 minutes on the clock. But meanwhile, Nigel Stock, they're losing the rear of the car slightly. The Crystal Supported Pebbles driver has not had a night to remember, it must be said. Running in the livery that hails back to, of course, the very infamous Nigel Mansell taking the win in the Williams, the Red 5 Williams, in those very similar colours here at Silverstone, all the way back through the years, and particularly that dummy he made on Nelson PK all the way back then. We look forward to seeing whether Nigel Stock can end his round number 9 on a high after 2 rounds that have not worked out. But if anything, we do know that Nigel Stock will get his head down and do everything he can in order to turn things around. But as he waits to go racing, Adam Delman as well has been another name. Well, today he has really been driving well, has Adam Delman for Next Gen Racing Orange. There's no doubt about it. He has continually delivered those drives round after round, and indeed today it has been race after race, lap after lap, and now he's got it all to do in the final race, starting a little bit further down in the order from his finishing position in race number 2, but inside that top 7. And can the Next Gen Racing Orange driver, much like teammate Mikey Doble, potentially creep back up there and make it another Next Gen Racing Orange 1-2 when they take the checker flag? Well, we will find out that shortly, because as our drivers head towards the timeline, we're about to hit the 10 minutes, which means the checker flag comes out in this warm-up session and we go racing one last time. Indeed, we'll be cutting across the grid very shortly and we'll take you through how they all line up for race number 3. So as we cut to the grid then, as it is formed for race number 3, here's how they will line up for the final race of today. John Higgins Sr. will start on reverse grid pole for HSR, joined by teammate John Higgins Jr. there at P2. And then on row number 2, Rob McGregor for the HSR, making it the HSR triplet on P1 through to P3. They have Andrew Pike for company in P4 and row number 2 from TSRC. Then Kieran Sharp, the fellow TSRC driver, will be started in P5, joined there by Adam Delman on row number 3 for Next Gen Racing Orange. Mikey Doble and Matthew Addy make up row number 4, with then Jamie Dorey and Gavan Gardener line up together, the 2 Pro Championship contenders on row number 5. Ben Bennyworth, the Pro-Am pole sitter there, starts in P11, indeed the Pro-Am Championship leader, joined by Lee Horner for Next Gen Racing Green in P12, and behind them on row number 7 will be Paul Scott and Josh Brown. Then row number 8, Nigel Stock and Matt Emmons. And in our final row, it will be Mark Arrowsmith from Crystal to Sport with Pebbles, joined by the privateer of Wayne Douglas, who will look to return to the form that we saw in race number 1. But that's the grid, and we now get ready for the lights. One red light, two red lights, three red lights, four red lights, five red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the final time today. Look at Nigel Stock in the rear of the picture, immediately looking to get on the charge here as they make their way down towards turn number 1. But as they come into the right-hander, Higgins Jr., they're covering off Higgins Senior quite nicely in terms of defending the run through the corner. And it means the rest of the field now has to play to the room of Higgins Jr. as they come down towards turns 2 and 3. Now as they make their way into the Maggots Aintree complex, we can see a bit further back Jamie Dorey already on the outside there when Mikey Doble is inside. He doesn't want to compromise Doble because we know that Doble has a huge threshold of pace and he can charge on through the order. But as they make the way down the Wellington straight, we can see 3 wide already between Doble, Addy and what's that, Kieran Sharp as they head on down towards the turn 4-5 switcheroo in terms of that left into right. And as they make the way to the brakes here, well, Delmont's clear, Kieran Sharp on the inside and Matthew Addy. And as they come on through to turn 5, Addy's not going to back out here and Sharp's got to be ready for this, because if he's not ready for it, he may find himself forced open. And look at this, Jamie Dorey trying to make it 3 wide coming out of the corner as they emerge from turn 5 to complete the opening lap. We've got a couple of car liveries that haven't loaded correctly. We do seem to be experiencing some technical faults there, I can tell you that. That is not going to stop us from going racing here as they make their way up towards turn number 1 once again. But after one lap, we've got a scramble here and Jamie Dorey finding his way between Sharp and Doble. But now as they all go a little bit deeper on cold tyres on a cold circuit as well, it's not helping as they head their way down towards turn number 2. But the point being that Dorey is trying to go all in and gain places. But Gavan Gardener now coming back up his inside here into turn number 3, and as he does, Gavan Gardener making the return moves. Kieran Sharp there right in the face of Dorey as they come out of turn 3, and Gardener now will have the outside run, but is it enough? Meanwhile, further up the road, TSRC's Andrew Pike here trying to make the move around the outside of Rob McGregor, trying to disrupt the HSR train from P1 to P3, and Pike now trying to make the move, but McGregor goes a bit deeper on the brakes lead, so really trailing it in. And meanwhile, Pike now to defend from Adam Delmont, who's trying to go the long way round as they make the way around through turn number 5. But as they do, you can see already Delmont having to back it off a little bit as they head on towards turn number 6 and complete another lap for the simple reason there's just not enough room to make that move count. Mikey Doble still watches on P7 behind Matthew Addy as they head up towards turn number 1 for the third time of asking. Further back, meanwhile, Wade Douglas gaining 3 places already, now trying to look for the move here versus Matt Emmons into turn 1. Up the inside he goes, he's going to charge on the brakes, they make the way through, and as they do down onto the brakes, we can see we've still got the scramble in front, and in particular that is Kieran Sharp here, who finds himself falling more and more down, and Gavan Gardener making a comfortable move up the inside. We've got great lock up there for somebody off circuit, and I do believe that is Matthew Addy, who we see returning on the right side of your picture, and we've got a spin there, and who's that spin for? I think that's for Josh Brown. Indeed it is, albeit the colours are not the same, but the JBW Racing driver having a nightmare moment. More on that in a second, but meanwhile, battling for P3 still Rob McGregor and Andrew Pike, and look at Delmont here. He's going to make it 3 wide into turn number 5, and oh my good lord, surely not, gentlemen, please. As you come into turn number 5, it's 2 wide at most, 3 does not go, and as they make the way out of the corner, well, they've all survived that, and Mikey Doble now is going to try and continue the trend of putting your nose to the place where it doesn't go, as they make the way out of the corner, and well, they're all absolutely going for it here in race number 3. All the gloves are off, and well, any peace and quiet that we did have on circuit, that has all been thrown by the wayside. It's gone out with the bathwater as they make the way down towards turn number 2 once again. But as we see in the rear of the picture, I think that is Kieran Sharp getting it wrong at turn number 1. I'm not sure there was contact, but well, they've all survived it, and the point is that Andrew Pike has now made his way into P3, but that was a very stark way of doing it compared to how it could have been done. But to be fair, he's got the job done, and Rob McGregor's down to P6. I can imagine Rob McGregor's not going to let this one slide as they head up towards turn number 4 here. McGregor will go battling with Doble to try and get back into the overall top 5. Meanwhile, further back, Ben Bennyworth continues to hold the prime lead here. He's ahead of Matthew Addy, and Paul Scott's a further place back as we see Paul Scott right now being chased by Wayne Douglas in the hub for P12. As they make the way through the right-hander, and now X is on out to complete this lap as they go to lap number 5. Let's take you through that order as it currently stands. John Higgins Sr. leads after starting on pole by an advantage of 1.2 seconds from John Higgins Jr. behind. Meanwhile, Andrew Pike slowly closed up to John Higgins Jr. here in P3, being hotly pursued by Delmont, by Doble, by McGregor. That's the top 6. Then Jamie Dorey a bit further back in P7, looking to close up and continue to press on. He's got his rival Gavan Gardener in P8, followed by Lee Horn P9. Ben Benioff, the prime leader, P10, but he's got Matthew Addy looking for the move here as they make the way under braking. In fact, that's not Matthew Addy trying to make the move. That is Ben Bennyworth versus Lee Horn. And Matthew Addy's looking at this and thinking about how he can get in the mix. And Addy's now going to have to run. Or is he? No, he's not. He has to back out there as they head their way down the back straight and up towards turn number 4 they go. And as they do, Addy doing everything in his power to go hunting. But I think the key thing is here that Ben Bennyworth now has to go on the defensive, and Lee Horn is given a bit of breathing room as they make the way through forward in towards 5. And as they head through the right hand, and now I think for what is Lee Horn, he's got a bit of room to manoeuvre, but for how long before Bennyworth tries to come back at him and Matthew Addy in too. But further back we can see that Matt Evans here looking to go hunted after Nigel Stock as they make the way through turn number 6. They head into the right hander, but no change as they come through the corner. And look at Kieran Sharp, he's dropped a long way down the order, losing 11 places to the start of the race, but it hasn't phased him. And Kieran Sharp now trying to go back around the outside of Matt Evans, but Evans keeping his elbows out there, making sure that Sharp knows it's the long way round, not the short way round, as they head down towards turns 2 and 3. Into Maggots they go now, into Aintree they'll go shortly as well, but as they head into the braking zone here, Sharp around the outside and Evans backs it off, I think waiting for an opportunity later on when they close up to Nigel Stock. But looking from them back to John Higgins Jr. Meanwhile, we ride on board the gearbox here of the HSR second place driver. You can see, look at Pike going hot on the hills and onto the inside into turn number 4. And well, Andrew Pike, my goodness, the man has got guts to go for a move like that. And there's even more guts in the mix now in terms of Mikey Doble trying to look for the move versus where's Higgins Jr. there for P3 into turn number 5. But that wasn't going to happen. And in the end, Doble had to back out. He was brave to try and go for it there, but the door was going to close. And now as they make the way up towards turn number 1, well, there's a bit of damage in all these cars, I can tell you that. The arrow's not quite as comfortable as it used to be, but as they roll the way through 1 and down towards 2 and 3, once again you can see the long train here from Pike all the way back to Rob McGregor in the form of what is 6 cars separated by only 1.5 seconds. And look at Doble looking up the inside here of Higgins Jr. Higgins Jr. has to leave the space there. Doble catching him unawares initially in the braking zone for turn number 3. As they make the way out, Doble gains another place, and the number 88 driver at this point is now picking them off one by one, and Delmont's trying to come with him, and so is Dorey. As they make the way down, Delmont here is not going to battle with his teammate, but they've got to be careful because these two came together, Delmont and Dorey, in race number 1. We saw it was carnage for the pair of them, and they won't want to repeat of that given how much Dorey has had to extract out the car in order to get himself right back up into this fight for race number 3. But as they make the way out to turn number 5 and onwards for that, Delmont holding firm versus his teammate right now. You can see Dorey looking left, right and centre, I think trying to send a message to Delmont, which is don't hold me up. As they make the way out towards turn number 1 here, I don't think Delmont's listening right now or getting the communique through as they head into Cops Quarter once again. But as they head on through it, we look a bit further back here to Paul Scott, who is still chasing after Kieran Sharp, but has recently been passed by Kieran Sharp as we're to understand it. And Sharp is gradually making his way up through the order quite rapidly. But in return, as they come on through, in fact, we do take a look back here. I think Jamie Dorey's just lost multiple places. What's happened to Jamie Dorey? Well, this was only moments ago. Now, Delmont battling on the inside of Dorey. Now, Dorey's coming very hot. In fact, he's had to throw the steering wheel open there to avoid contact with the back of John Higgins Jr. Otherwise, that would have been a disaster for the pair of them. But Dorey coming in hot to try and pass his teammate. And, well, now, I think for Dorey, he knows the gloves are off here. He's got to try and make that move. Or Delmont is not simply going to be given that opportunity to come on through. Of course, the one plus side of this that Dorey does have is that Gavan Gardener is 2 places behind, still battling with Lee Horn for P8. So, effectively, Dorey, so long as he finishes ahead of Gavan Gardener, doesn't lose anything in this race. But of course, for Dorey, when the doors open, there's an opportunity. He needs to take it right now because Gardner, if Gardner gets a strong run at Brands Hatch, that championship will swing the other way. It's by no means said and done. And as they make the way up through turn 1 here, you can see that Gardner now really having to deal with the side-by-side battle with Lee Horn on the right-hand side. And Gardner, in fact, not having the speed to keep the battle into turn number 3, and he has to back out. Wayne Douglas, meanwhile, is there with them, and Matthew Addy up the inside of Ben Bennyworth there for P11. Bennyworth leaving the door open, I think realising that he's battling with a load of pros here and he doesn't necessarily need to do so. But the upside for what is Bennyworth is the fact that Paul Scott right now is 4 seconds behind him, 2 places down, but Bennyworth's not going to let this give him the opportunity to rest in the fact he tries to look up the inside there, Matthew Addy, but no way through. Meanwhile, we've heard that Kieran Sharp has had to jump to the pits. We're not sure what's happened to Kieran Sharp, but Nigel Stock right now having the strongest race of his evening, P2 in the Brougham class. He's got Paul Scott for company behind, but Stock can hold on to this. He'll be able to salvage some huge points going into the season finale at Brands Hatch Grand Prix as he heads on through at turn at number 6 here. We're almost at the halfway point of the race. The next lap we turn will complete the first half of the race, and we take a look back at what happened to Kieran Sharp. Well, this was only moments ago, and it was 3 wide coming out of turn 3. But in the end, Sharp was just simply caught there on the nose of one of his peers, and that sends him to the wall. But as we return to the live pitch, there we've seen plenty of 3 wides already in this one race. Didn't really see any races 1 and 2, but it's almost as they reserved everything for the final race of the evening. Speaking of digging into his reserves, Wayne Douglas here making Gavan Gardener really dig out his reserves of pace, because we can see just in front Lee Horne's already found his way on through, and now Douglas, well, trying to find his way past Gavan Gardener but can't find it at the moment. And as they make their way through the left into right, Wayne Douglas trying to go on the offensive here to gain P9 off of the second place driver in the pro class of Gavan Gardener, second place in the championship, that is. P8 over the course of this race at the moment, and as they make their way up through the right-hander here in this battle for P9 overall, Gardener doing everything in his power to try and keep him at bay in terms of Douglas at bay and hunt down Horne. But as they make their way into turn number 1, we see the drivers are emerging from turn 1, and we've got Higgins Jr. here in a side-by-side scruff with Adam Delmont. I think some elbows are coming out between the two of them. It's Higgins Jr. on the left, Delmont on the right, as they break their way into turn number 3. Through they go, and Delmont's not giving this up. He's trying to hang it all the way around the outside. Meanwhile, whilst all this is going on, looking at the front of the field, just ahead of them, Higgins Sr. has got the pressure here of Mikey Doble right behind, and Doble has caught up to Higgins Sr. and Higgins Sr. now with 9 minutes plus the final lap to go. Effectively 10 minutes of racing still on the clock for Higgins Sr. from HSR. He has got perhaps the biggest challenge of them all, which is to keep Mikey Doble at bay as we ride on board here with Higgins Sr. almost losing the camera off the back of the Elantra there as Doble gets very close to taking the rear camera off, and as they make their way out to turn number 6 and on to the next lap shortly, you can see already Doble positioned himself well, getting as close as possible to Higgins Sr., but he's got time to wait here. There's plenty of time still to go in the mind of Doble as they come through turn number 1. The Honda badge looks bright here. Can Doble find a way through, or will it be the case that he has to wait once again as they charge down towards turn number 2? There's a potential look to the inside here. No way through at the moment, but Pike comes to the move as well. But you can see that Higgins Sr. literally dragging the car on the apex there, trying to prevent Doble from getting any momentum and trying to force him backwards to Pike. But the problem is Pike right now is waiting in the wings here. He's not trying to jump on top of his rival as they make the way down towards turn number 4. But as they head into the braking zone here, I hope that's not a sign of things to come. Oh my goodness, and well, that is Higgins Sr. being tapped and turned. I think there's a bit of latency there with regards to Higgins Sr., which won't have helped Doble knowing where Higgins Sr. is on circuit. But in all the chaos, Delmont goes around the outside of Andrew Pike on the exit of 5 and makes P3 as they head across the line. And now Doble's on the inside of Higgins Sr. as they head across the line onto lap number 13. And with now 7.5 minutes on the clock, Doble is trying to make the move for the lead, and Delmont comes on through here. And remember what I said earlier, Next Gen Racing Orange will try and come through together, and this is what they're doing. And Jamie Dorey also coming up here. You can see him there looking up the inside as Delmont keeps the door open, and Higgins Sr. That's why I don't think he's got anything left. I don't think he's got anywhere to put the car on the outside. There's a scruffle between the two. There's contact between Dorey and Higgins Sr. and, well, Higgins Sr. right now has literally been muscled out of the lead and sent all the way down to P7 in the space of 3 corners, and that is absolutely huge. Now it's the case that we have the 3 Next Gen Racing Orange drivers, P1 and P3, Andrew Pike in P4, and then he has got the 3 HSR drivers behind him. It's almost as if Andrew Pike is trying to give peace talks here to the two teams as they make the way on around. And well, for Pike right now, he'll want to go hunting after Dorey, there's no doubt about that, but he's got to worry about the fact that he's got 3 HSR drivers behind him who all want a piece of the action and all want to be on that pro class podium as they head in towards turn number 1 once again. But as they head their way through the right hander, we can see Wayne Douglas behind also salivated the prospect to going hunting after a top 5 finish as he gets closer. Lee Horne as well. Gavan Gardener, we're bringing the entire train back together. We've now effectively got what is all the way from P1 through to P12 in the form of Ben Bennyworth, only separated by 4.5 seconds. So you average it out, that's not even half a second between cars. And as they make the way down onto the Wellington straight, we are seeing now on the timing tower Higgins Sr. having some continued connectivity issues as they charge over through, and Gardener battling with Lee Horne. Lee Horne not making this anywhere near easy and really digging in deep for this P9 as they make the way through turn 4 and into 5. Gardener trying to find a way on through. But the problem for the Audi RS3 is it just does not have that ability under braking and through the corners, particularly these low-speed corners compared to the Honda. And as they make the way out of turn 5 and onwards towards the next lap, Gardner is running out of chances. And with Doble, Delman and Dorey in that top 3, things are going the way of Dorey in this race, and that will hurt Gardner going into the finale. But as they come across the line, we look from them to Nigel Stock, who's battling side by side with Paul Scott here. Paul Scott's recently found his way past Nigel Stock as they make the way through turn number 6 and on towards 1. And as they come through turn 1, we ride on board here with Nigel Stock, who gets the better run of the 2 as they head into the braking zone. And as they make the way onto the brakes here, Stock tries to outbrake Paul Scott into Maggot's corner, but in the end Paul Scott outbraking his rival there and just simply hooking it up nicely. Stock almost going off circuit. In fact, Emmons now is going to come through. This is the battle for P2 and P3 in the Prime class, so this is critical for these guys as they make the way down the Wellington straight. The Stock being robbed of another place on the exit of 3, and now Emmons trying to go hunting after Paul Scott, but first he's got to keep Nigel Stock at bay, and these two no strangers to one another. Of course, major rivals in the AM class in the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship Season 2, if my memory serves me correctly, where it was between them in the season finale. And as they made the way out, of course, as they made the way all the way out towards the timeline once again, both drivers here looking to one-up one another. But speaking of one-up one another, we can see the top 3 here running, well, that Mikey Doble running away, and Adam Delman and Jamie Dorey now falling backwards towards Andrew Pike. Now Pike is actually looking a major threat here late in the day, lay on the brakes into turn number 3. And Dorey can't shut the door there as they come through turn number 3. In fact, Dorey goes wide, uses the runoff space to his advantage there to avoid contact. But I wonder if that's going to be a slowdown later in the lap. And Pike now trying to go all the way around the outside, or at least set up a move that looks like it, but he'll probably cut back to the inside into turn number 4 if he can get Dorey to go deep. But Dorey literally turning the car onto the apex curve and mounted the curve as if his life depended on it. And you can understand why, because he does not want Pike pushing him backwards towards the combination of Higgins Jr. and Higgins Sr. Because you can imagine the father-son combo at this point will literally go all in to try and beat Dorey and push him further down the order. But as they make the way through turn number 6 and onwards towards another lap, 3.5 minutes still on the clock. Still opportunities for our drivers to gain places. And right now, the one driver who you've got to feel for, because he's just not able to find a way past Lee Horn, is Gavan Gardener. He's right there, tucked in that P10 position as we ride on board with the Audi RS3 driver from Rado Motorsport. But the problem is Lee Horn, despite that Honda steering not having the pace of the Audi RS3 in clear air, when they're in dirty air, it just seems as though Lee Horn's got enough in the tank to defend and hold firm. As they make the way out of turn number 3 and up towards turn 4, you can see Horn defending all the way to the inside down the Wellington straight, not feeling away from that inside line at all. And Garner's going to make his way around the outside here on the brakes, but this is where Lee Horn can use the Honda's brakes as advantage. Although I say that, I think Garner getting it right this time, just overextending slightly, a little bit of understeer creeping in, but for Lee Horn, it's not as though he's got the deal done here as they exit out the corner. And in fact, Garner getting the better run initially off of the exit of 5, but now you can see where Lee Horn's had greater room to manoeuvre on the outside line. He's able to build up a little bit more speed. Meanwhile, behind them, Matthew Addy trying to hold off Ben Bennyworth in the run towards turn number 1, and Bennyworth not giving in here as he tries to go hunting after P11 overall. But indeed, our prone drivers here all the way down towards the bottom of the order, but still looking to pick off places and battle one another to the finish. And speaking of battling to the finish, we look back up to Adam Delmont here in P2, who's holding his teammate Jamie Dorey firm but fair at bay, and then behind Andrew Pike looking at his potential move. But one driver who we haven't talked about, and he is now carving his way up towards P5, with here Wayne Douglas looking to battle on the inside of Higgins Sr. Onto the brakes they go, and you can see Higgins Sr. backing the car out there and looking to come back, and there's contact between the two of them. And well, I think there Higgins Sr. going in a little bit too hot for comfort, but at the same time Wayne Douglas now, I think will be feeling as though he's been a bit bruised by that one and not too pleased. But this is going to give Rob McGregor every opportunity he needs. And meanwhile, Gavan Gardener finally finds a way alongside Lee Horn here with only 2 more laps to go as they cross the timeline based on a bit of mental maths. And as they come into turn 1, Gardener's finally going to have a shot at this move for P9. He has waited over half the race for this. And as they make the way out, well, Lee Horn's got the better run out of turn 1. But the question is, can he find his way onto the brakes into the run to turn 3? Gardener's going to hold the outside here, but Lee Horn's not going to give this one in, as we see Douglas coming together with Rob McGregor just in front. They're still fighting one another, as they make the way on out, and Lee Horn there getting a lot of speed off the corner, a bit of contact with Gavan Gardener, and Gardener literally boxed in behind where's Rob McGregor as they head down the Wellington Straight. But for Gardener, Rob McGregor's going fast enough here that he can slipstream his way on through, but now he's boxed in under braking, and Lee Horn is going to go all the way around the outside for the pair of them as they make the way on through, and Lee Horn makes it count, or does he, as they head in towards turn number 5. The race leader's about to go on to the final lap as he passes my commentary box window, but Lee Horn now battling on his way on out here, and Horn is holding firm as they come through the right-hander. 30 seconds to go, there's one more lap to go, and as they come across the line to go on to the 20th and final lap, Lee Horn still side by side with Rob McGregor. Can he get this done? I think he can. Oh goodness me, he loses the rear of the car on the apex of 1, and it's over for Lee Horn, surely, or is it, as he returns and he covers off Gavan Gardener here, and Rob McGregor literally on the inside, and Lee Horn in the end outbreaks them all as they make the way on through. But look at the contact still between the two drivers. McGregor and Gardener still going side by side all the way on through to the bitter end as they make the way down the Wellington Straight. Matthew Addy just behind, but as they head up towards the braking zone here for turns 4 and 5, we must look away from them to our race leader, for as he comes through the final corner, the checker flag will wait him one more time to make it the perfect day of race wins 3 out of 3. And as he comes to the timeline, Next Gen Racing Orange's Mikey Doble takes the 3rd and final win of the day overall in the pro class. Congratulations to him. Jamie Dorey jumps ahead of Adam Delmont on the line. I think they did the switch at the line. Andrew Pike P4, John Higgins Jr. P5, Higgins Senior P6, Lee Horn P7, Gavan Gardener P8, Rob McGregor P9, Matthew Addy P10, Wayne Douglas P11, and then here is your prime winner, making it 3 prime wins back-to-back today. Ben Bennyworth taking on P12, Paul Scott P13, and then Nigel Stock makes it onto the podium, P14 overall on the podium of the prime class, ahead of Matt Emmons, and Josh Brown comes across the line last but not least on the lead lap with the retirements of Kieran Sharp and Mark Arrowsmith. But my goodness, what a race number 3. And well, whilst it might have been the Mikey Doble show up front running away with things once he got into the lead, it was battles left, right and centre further behind. And I can tell you that right now, Lee Horn, Gavan Gardener, Rob McGregor and Matthew Addy must be absolutely exhausted for battling for position. And we will take a look back at that fight all the way to the end as we do just take a look back on the replay. In fact, we take a look at it from what was the start of lap 19. So as they made their way through it, and this was going on to the final lap effectively, Gavan Gardener battling with Lee Horn across that line. In fact, we're looking back at it over 2 laps in this battle because it just went on for so long, but we loved every moment. This was lap number 19. Now, Gavan Gardener at this point finally cleared Lee Horn, or so he would have thought he cleared him, but this is where it all starts to go wrong for the pair, because Rob McGregor in front here battling with Wayne Douglas. What you'll see happens is with the contact between the two, and we talked about this initially, that contact means that as they emerge from the corner and Gavan Gardener and Lee Horn behind, look at Lee Horn there in the contact with Gardener, he comes on through, but the thing with where Lee Horn's positioned himself with that contact is the case that he was able to find himself a bit more speed and clear track, and this what's led to a 2x2 in the run on the penultimate lap, and they came through was turns 4 and 5. Now coming through the corner, you can see Lee Horn going a bit deep there, but still covering off what was Rob McGregor on the exit of turn number 5, but getting contact between the two of them, and Matthew Addy also starting to get into the mix. Now they went on to the final lap, 2x2 they charged, Lee Horn trying to hold that position, but as he headed over towards what's turn number 1, we'll ride on board him, we'll see exactly what happened from Lee Horn's perspective in terms of getting it wrong. You can see there in the rearview mirror, Rob McGregor behind and just hitting those sausage curves on the inside a bit too high, that unsettled the car. So that caused understeer for Lee Horn. Now making his way down towards turns 2 and 3, battling away on the brakes here, Rob McGregor on the inside. Gavan Gardener at this point has got to go all in on the brakes and try to get Lee Horn to go deeper and deeper into the corner to find his way past Rob McGregor. Gets a really good exit out of turn number 3, and as they made their way in the drag race now, Elantra versus Audi RS3, the two giants of straight line speed. You can see here Lee Horn gifting a little bit of a tow to Gavan Gardener. I think they're perhaps feeling as though that Gavan Gardener deserves the tow given how hard the two of them have battled, and Gardener then sails up the inside of Rob McGregor, but it's not over yet. McGregor in the end caught out there by Matthew Addy, who tries to go inside to outside, but as they came out of the corner you could see Lee Horn's already got the job done to take home that P7, P6 in class. Gavan Gardener behind there flashing his lights. I think say it all along, it's been a great race. Rob McGregor behind there finishing ahead of Matthew Addy, and that's how the group of 4 crossed the line together in a brilliant four-way fight for what was that that P7 position overall, P6 of the Pro class. But as we return to the live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look through those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after race number 3 in round 9 of the NXTCC for 2022, here today at the Silverstone National Circuit, Mikey Doval making it 3 out of 3 for NXTGEN Racing Orange, ahead of his 2 teammates Jamie Dorey and Adam Delmont. Dorey and Delmont switching on the finishing line. Andrew Bite, P4 there, another solid drive from the Sim Racing Collective driver, and indeed if he does decide to come back for future NXTGEN Racing Series, I think everyone will raise an eyebrow at the pace he's shown today. John Higgins Jr. completes the overall top 5 ahead of what is father John Higgins Sr. And then Gavan Gardener, Rob McGregor, Matthew Addy and Wayne Douglas completed the top 10. Ben Bennyworth in P11 there, taking the Pro-Am win ahead of Paul Scott and Nigel Stock. Scott and Nigel Stock completing the Pro-Am podium, and congratulations to Nigel Stock in particular for picking up the podium in race 3 after a dismal pair of races in races 1 and 2. Matt Emmons P14 ahead of Josh Brown P15, Lee Horn P16, and then we had the 2 retirements of Kieran Sharp and Mark Arrowsmith. But congratulations to all of our drivers for fantastic racing through and through today. And now that only leaves us with one more major event, and that is of course the post-round interviews of our selected drivers. We'll be back in approximately 5 to 7 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, for those. Don't go anywhere, you will not want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, without further ado, it's time for us to kick off our post-round interviews for our selected drivers. And today we have got 4 pros here for interview. Rob McGregor first off, then we'll be hearing from Mikey Doble, and then John Higgins Sr., and wrapping up with Jamie Dorey. And well, 4 drivers all in the same class, but having very different stories to tell today. And we start off with the story of Rob McGregor, which saw him oscillate around the places of P9 and P5. And as he joins me in the interview room, Rob, last time out at Monza, it wasn't a day for everyone to enjoy. We saw plenty of battles go wrong at Monza, but today, right in the thick of it from race number 1 all the way through to the finish, 2 P9s and a P5. Was it a more positive day today at Silverstone?
Yeah, I had so much fun. You know, the Elantra's still struggling off the start, which it gives us a straight disadvantage compared to the Hondas nowadays. But you know, Silverstone sprung up its usual touring car racing. It was close. It was well. You know, it was well fun. And a lot of folk had their elbows out, as you could see. You know, I want to give a shout out to Matthew Addy. Yeah, he had his elbows out in the second race. Obviously didn't like me too much, but yeah, had great fun. Can't complain. You know, would have liked to have maybe been further up in race 3, because I felt like I had the pace all night for a podium. I'm yet to get my first podium still, so yeah, kind of got in that. I kind of got elbowed out of that quite early on. But yeah, you know, I had good battles with Lee Horn, and obviously Jamie and the other guys from HSR and everyone else around me was, yeah, race 3 was definitely a kind of elbows out, all balls to the wall kind of thing. So yeah, it was great fun. I enjoyed that.
Oh, most definitely. And taking it from the qualifying session onwards, in qualifying, we saw it was a bit of a slow start for yourself and the guys at HSI. It was almost as if you'd saved all the pace of the final 5 minutes. Just take us for that qualifying session in the Elantra. It just looked as though the car took a lot of time to start moving up the order.
Yeah, so the car, as well as getting off the start line slowly, which is one of the disadvantages, it seems to take 5 or 6 laps to turn the tyres on, even on a warm track. You know, I think qualifying was 94 Fahrenheit, which is about, I don't know, 20, 28, 29 degrees, something like that, I think. I'm not very sure. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, the Hyundai takes so long to just turn its tyres on. But once it's there, you know, the pace is there. Like again, it came down to brake bias. You know, Junior and I and John were all chatting through the week about it, and we found that running less brake bias. I think I was running 54 in qualifying, 54.8% in qualifying. Seemed to work for me, and then when it became cooler, you were at 55s, 56%. But yeah, as I said, it took a lot to turn the tyres on. John, our plan was to kind of give each other the tow. Senior got tow, so just buggered off. But yeah, I tried to tow Junior around, and Junior struggled to kind of get the car turned into turn 1. And the track limits at turn 1 are so strict, you know. So yeah, he invalidated like 4 or 5 laps in a row, same as me. So I set one good banker lap, and then I believe I did a 101.3, I think it was, which got me 3rd or 4th overall. And you know that in a grid split by, you know, top 10 split by 4/10, 5/10 of a second, you know, it was properly quick because the track's not that long. But the times are, you know, there's not a lot of corners to get wrong, so the times are so close. But yeah, qualifying was tricky for me anyways, and certainly Junior would say the same, you know.
Oh, indeed. And taking that from qualifying with a strong qualifying performance, race number 1 did see quite a bit of elbows out action from the start. And having started from the front rows of the grid, finding yourself down in P9 come the finish, was it a case that with race number 1 seeing the highest temperatures of the evening as well in terms of race conditions, you just needed a bit more time to get the car into the rhythm?
Yeah, the two mega issues for the Elantra were certainly at the start. With it bogging down so far at the kind of, the launch off the grid, it was kind of unfair. Because I'd kind of dropped maybe 3 positions at the start. So, I had a strong qualifying, then that didn't really matter because I knew that if I didn't have a strong qualifying, I'd be going backwards anyways. And then it took again 5 or 6 laps to get to even get heat into the tyres. So yeah, but I'm a bit gutted with race 1 and overall race 2 as well. Not race 2 because I think I finished 5th, but race 3 certainly. But these wee bugs that the Elantra have, it is what it is, As you've seen, we finished 5th, 6th, and 7th in the second race. And the car's got pace. Certainly, it has got pace. But yeah, race 1 was quite elbows out, especially with the boys kind of middle of the grid. But yeah, I can't complain. I had a lot of fun. Probably one of the most fun evenings I've had. Racing without without any mega offs or any big crashes. There was a lot of times where my bum was twitching like a rabbit's nose in the sim seat here, and sweat was dribbling down my face. But it's hard because the cars are so close, and the track's such a small time track. It's just so close. So yeah, yeah, I had so much fun.
Oh, indeed, it sounds it. And it sounds as though it's worn you out quite a lot. In
Yeah,
terms of
I'm tired, mate.
just a quick comment on race number 3. Obviously, the reverse grid draw being P7, so that meant that
Yeah,
your teammates started on the front row and you in P3. Just take us through
yeah.
your reaction to that and then the subsequent race.
Well, we figured out John had pole and that John Junior was going to be second. We knew that. But we didn't know exactly where I would fit in. So like, I might be 7th. We didn't know exactly. We still don't know how exactly the reverse grid works. So it was kind of just a playing game. And then I ended up 3rd on the grid. And my hope was to obviously win it because I had the pace all night to kind of prove that I could be up with the big boys. Um, as I have been. Yeah, obviously it didn't happen. So kind of got elbowed out in the second or third lap by Andrew Pike. Fair play, he had all reason to do it. It's touring cars. It's not single seaters. You're not going to have mega damage, but the arms and the elbows were certainly out in race 3, and you could feel that straight away. And as soon as I got behind Andrew and Adam Delmont, it kind of just unfolded really. um, but yeah, I'm not that upset. I'll take P9. You know, Teammates did well. They've got solid points. John Senior, especially for the championship. And same again for John Higgins Junior. He's got points for the championship. And yeah, I'm gutted that I didn't get my podium, but still got a round left, and anything can happen. So yeah, race 3 was certainly great fun as well. Yeah, and just with the amount of door banging and elbows out job, my car kind of went off the pace towards the end. I was starting to struggle towards the end, but just because I feel I picked up some form of damage, whether it was kind of engine damage or aero damage, the car just didn't feel right. 3 or 4 laps, 5 laps from the end, so it was kind of make positions, lose positions, make more positions, lose positions again. But I had a lot of fun. Can't complain. And yeah, looking forward to the final round at Brands. Obviously, um, just to see what happens with the championship. I'm not sure if Jamie's wrapped it up yet. I'm not sure. You'd have to tell me.
Well, I don't think he's quite wrapped up yet. I think it's still open, and indeed the Teams Championship is still open as well. But just on Brands Hatch, how are you feeling for the full Grand Prix version of the circuit?
Yeah, that says it all, really. I'm not sure. I believe, can't remember. To be fair, I think we've done Brands Indy, haven't we, in this
Yes.
league? So yeah, enjoy Brands Indy more than Brands GP, but it's in the real touring cars. It's the final round of the real touring cars. So anything can happen. My bet's on Jamie to win the championship. I'll put that on him now. Hopefully, I've not cussed him. But yeah, I'd like to see Jamie, because by the sounds of things, he's been trying for so long, and he's just that slow and useless that he's never done it. So, but yeah, I'd like to see him obviously win. It'd be nice. And if Mikey fancies having a week away, we'd appreciate that, so we can get second. We could win the teams championship. And I believe, sadly, because Chris is now not doing the last round, Chris Danes, I believe that John Senior's third in the championship. So, we'll be pushing for him to get more points. Him and Junior, third and fourth, I think. So we'll be looking to push them on to get more points. I'm out the running, so I'm just being the team player now. So, I'll give anyone a hand as long as they're wearing the HSR livery and they're paying me the right wages. So.
Oh, absolutely brilliant, Rob. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to say a thank you to or give a shout out to live on air?
Obviously, I would just like to shout out the team. Obviously, we're trying to get AJ back. We're still pursuing that dream. But I heard that he's got a lifestyle change with potential girlfriend or something, so he might not be back. And obviously my teammates, John Junior, doing outstandingly well in the championship, better than me. And yeah, anyone who's listening, watching, and watching the stream, you guys back at the headquarters, you guys are doing amazing with the streams, and obviously the lads who set it up, Jamie, the next gen lot, they're doing their job. So, thank you to them, and I'm looking forward to Brands.
Oh, well, we're very grateful to have yourself out on the circuit, Rob, week in, week out. But congratulations on your results today, and we look forward to seeing you at Brands Hatch for the season finale.
Jamie, you know where my pin details are, mate, if you need to send me cash.
I'm sure he'll be listening.
Cheers, mate.
Take care, Rob.
You too, buddy. Cheers, man.
So hearing there from Rob McGregor, full of joy, tired, but absolutely loving the racing, and also quite a few comical comments thrown in there with regards to helping anybody out, so long as they're wearing a HSR logo, but that's the team mentality, and also with regards to saying there to Jamie, well, he's going in for Jamie to win the Pro Championship, and the running joke there, my contact details and indeed my credit card details. Well, we can tell you that there's no bribery going on behind the scenes in the NXTGEN Racing Touring Car Championship. But what I can also tell you is going on is that very shortly we're going to be bringing Mikey Doble into the interview room. And it is an evening for Mikey Doble where it's been an absolutely dominant run once again. And as he joins me in the interview room, Mikey, 3 wins on the bounce at a circuit where the pace could not have been closer and the racing was absolutely tooth and out all the way through. It must feel brilliant to once again make it a triplet of wins.
Yeah, it was coming off a bit of a rough week last week. It's nice to put all that behind you and come back and get 3 wins, fastest laps, and build a big gap in race 2. It's good for the confidence, and thoroughly enjoyed the racing tonight, specifically race 3, coming through from 7th. Actually fell back down to about 8th, I think, after lap 1. So it was a really close race, and the driving standards were much better tonight as well.
Oh, indeed. And before we get to race number 3, of course, qualifying, we saw you put the car right up there on pole. In that qualifying session, Honda seemed to be very strong and come alive quickly. Did you find that the car was just in the zone today, particularly after the difficulties of Monza? It was all slipstream orientated. Here, Silverstone had some slipstream zones, but also had some very heavy trail braking zones where the Honda seems to be strong.
Yeah, I think we all know the Honda's strength is definitely on the brakes, and with Silverstone National, there's 2 heavy braking zones where you're putting lateral load into the car whilst you're braking. So having that stability under braking is pretty priceless round here if you want a quick lap time. Yeah, slipstream does play a part. I'd say, you can do a quick lap on your own if you've got the car hooked up, but it's probably worth 1.5 to 2 tenths being in the slipstream. So I thought the qualifying probably wasn't going to be the Honda's strength, because I know that the Hyundais are very good over a lap, but their tyres go off a bit quicker than the Honda. So it allowed the Honda to get qualifying near the front to come into its own in the race with consistency.
Well, indeed. And speaking of getting towards the front of the consistency in the race, race number 1 saw a lot of battling in the run to turn 1, and particularly on the first couple of laps. But when we saw some of our guest drivers really mixing it up, and that gave you the breathing room to break away, just take us through that, because it looked as though as soon as battling kicked off behind you, you were sort of, okay, I'm gone. I'll see you all next race.
Yeah, I mean, the key on the first sort of couple of laps is to not overdrive the car, because the tyres, for some reason around Silverstone, were taking at least 3 laps to come up to temperature. So it's all about not making any mistakes. And I think where on lap 1, or lap 2, I never had to defend from a car behind. I always had that sort of 3 to 4 tenth gap, which allowed me to take my normal racing line where the others behind were battling and getting offline and slowing each other down. So then once you get to sort of 1.5 seconds in front, they're losing the slipstream from you. So then it's all down to driver pace from there.
Well, indeed. And then speaking of race number 2, a similar situation. After a bit of a battle-strewn start, it looked as though you were making ground once again, and a comfortable win.
Yeah, I'd say race 2 tonight was probably one of the best drives I've done with NXTGEN in terms of pace and start and just the whole package of the race, because I made a very good getaway, probably better than race 1. Made no mistakes in the first couple of laps, managed to build a gap, and then the pace was actually 1/10 or so a lap quicker than I was in race 1, and I was just refining my driving around what is quite a short lap, but there's still little bits here and there you can tidy up and just gain those last couple hundredths. And I think I ended up getting down into the 1 minute dead 0.5s in that race on my own, which was quicker than my qualifying time with a slipstream. So yeah, I was pleased with the way I was driving tonight, and especially that race.
And then coming on to race number 3, where the challenge lay starting from P7 with that reverse grid. I do have to ask, were you glad it was P7 and not, say, P11 or P12?
No, I was hoping it was going to be a bit further back, to be honest, spice it up a little bit. I was sort of quietly confident that around Silverstone it presents a lot of opportunities to overtake. It's very wide, that it might not be an issue getting to the front and having a battle for the lead with the pace of race 1 and race 2. So I wasn't really fussed whether it was going to be P12 or P7 or whatever. Just wanted to enjoy the race. I didn't want to get involved and rush my way to the front, get involved in an accident. Just wait for it to all settle down and then just pick them off one at a time.
Oh, indeed, and that's the exact approach we saw you take, making your way on through. And with regards to battling side by side, of course, there's a lot of opportunities at Silverstone National, particularly through the turns 4 and 5 complex, to be able to run side by side, try to look for cutbacks, or go all the way around the outside. Just take us through what it is from your perspective that gives you that confidence when you're running side by side to dare to make those cutbacks or that long extension around corners.
I think if you've sat behind someone for a lap or so and you've analysed what lines they take and where their car is strong and weak, you can size up your move a lap before, so you can surprise them about where you're going to overtake. Some drivers, particularly the real world drivers, know exactly where to place the car. So even if you are slightly quicker than them, it's hard to get by. Referring to John Higgins, he put up a stellar fight for the lead there. It's a shame his internet lagged out for a couple of corners, which I unfortunately resulted in some contact, although he did gather it up and I didn't pass him from that. But I think in the end he conceded due to the lack of internet connection at that point. But yeah, I mean, he was putting the car in all the right places. I was very much struggling to get up the inside into any corner, and the move was going to have to be done around the outside. So I think it denied us of a sort of a cracking finish all the way to the end there, but ended up getting in front of him with about 8 minutes to go and pulling the gap.
Well, it was unfortunate there were some connectivity issues for John Higgins Sr., but like you say, a brilliant battle building on up, and then you're able to get on through and run it way to its conclusion. And of course now, with Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit being our season finale, and quite nicely matching up to the season finale of BTCC this weekend, how are you feeling for the long variant of the Kentish circuit?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, this is going to be my last round of this season tonight because due to real world racing commitments next weekend, I've got the final weekend of my real season racing, which means I'll be traveling up to that circuit next weekend. So I'll probably be watching from afar as I did in the middle of the season. But yeah, just big good luck to everyone who's going to be racing next Thursday night, and hopefully I'll be back for a full season in the next series of this, whether it be World Touring Cars or British Touring Cars again, hopefully in the same cars, and with the real world racing having finished by then and a change of evening, I think hopefully I should be back for the full season.
Oh, indeed. We'd love to have you for the full season, Mikey, but of course, those real world racing commitments, you're doing stellar in those, and we wish you all the best in the finale that is coming on up. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to live on air?
Yeah, so all my family watching, you know who you are, tuning in every week to support me. Hopefully you enjoy the racing. Thanks to Jamie and Lee, the admin, all the admin at NXTGEN who put on another great series. Very much enjoy racing with everyone here. Nice bunch of people. And to yourself for putting on amazing broadcasts all through the season. We all enjoy watching it. I enjoy watching it back after we finished racing, and hopefully you'll be joining us again for the next season.
Well, more on that come next week's programme, but Mikey, what I can tell you is it's a pleasure for me, and indeed, I think it's a pleasure from everybody involved to run this series from start to finish, but also we love seeing you out on circuit, and congratulations today on your triplet of wins, and whilst you won't be there at the season finale next week, we wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you come back in a future season.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Take care. So hearing that from Mikey Doble, well, very happy with his performance today, and I think a little bit disappointed in the fact that the battle in race number 3 between himself and John Higgins Sr. not last in the distance due to a bit of intervention from connectivity issues, but still a great race all the same. You can see it was building up to a crescendo, and well, we look forward to seeing Mikey Doble come on back in a future series as hosted by NXTGEN. Whether it's the second season of the touring car or not, stay tuned for that next week. We'll definitely have more information on that in a week's time, but we do look forward to seeing that Doble get on well in his future racing commitments in the real world. We wish him all the best, of course, in his season that finale in a week and a bit's time, and also we look forward to having him back on circuit soon. But now we must come to another driver who's done plenty of real-world racing, but focusing on what is sim racing at this time, and that was John Higgins Sr., who tonight having a mixed set of results, but at the same time delivering when it mattered most, particularly in races 2 and 3. And as he shortly joins us in the interview room, it'll be interesting to hear his insights, given the fact that we do know John does love his close racing, and well, he seems to be right at the thick end of the racing here at Silverstone. So as he joins us in the interview room now, John, Monza was not the round you wanted, but today, a change of location, Silverstone National, you're right in the thick of all the fighting in races 2 and 3 in particular. Much more like the touring car you expected today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were there. Felt really fast. Did a little bit of practice, sort of 15, 20 minutes before the official session started at 7, and did my fastest lap. And you're like, game on tonight. You know, get in the draft and better team play with the guys and HSR, and we could have a really strong night. And listen, it was always going to be tough. Silverstone National, you know, when you look at the times, all right, if you take Mikey out of it, and it was split by, what was that, 2.5 tenths, I think, from second to sort of 8th or 10th.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it was always going to be so close, so tight. the worry after last week was, is it going to be really good racing, or is it going to be like last week where it's just going to be a banger race? And pleasingly tonight, it was really good racing. I think everybody did exceptionally well. Yeah, there's a few incidents. I know Mikey was really apologetic. Listen, Mikey, that's not your fault. We spoke about it before. I don't know what is going on with my connection. I've got a really good PC, which is spec'd up. I'm running 75 megabytes per second. I should not be getting lag in that game, and for some reason it keeps dropping off. Jamie just showed me the replay. I sort of disappeared just as we're coming under the bridge down the Wellington Straight, and when I reappear, Mike is obviously turned in, and I've just reappeared in front of him. And there's a bit of contact. I'm going to take that away. No, would Mikey have won that race anyway? Yes. I was really counting on Junior and Rob just trying to get me sort of 3, 4, 5 second lead in that final race. But listen, it wasn't to be. It was a really strong night. Could it have been much better? Yes. But look, it's going to be proper touring car racing around there. People are going to send it, get their elbows out. I did exactly the same thing, as you've probably seen on the stream, where you're just sending it up the inside of somebody or whatever. But I think that was a really good spectacle, and anybody watching, I hope that was really good at home. Hope everybody was entertained, and it all comes down to next week on Brands Hatch GP. So bit of testing to do before then, and then let's see what that brings us.
Oh, indeed. And just before we talk about Brands Hatch and what lies ahead in a week's time, coming on to your individual races, of course, qualifying saw you qualify quite well up the grid in terms of position P8. Race number 1, however, saw quite a bit of back and forth between yourself and the drivers around you. For example, we saw a bit of battling with Andrew Pike, who tried to come through the field quite rapidly, and also Paul Scott getting in the mix, and also what was it, Ben Bennyworth then. It saw you drop down to P11. But we were also talking about the tyre temperatures and particularly track temperature with Rob McGregor earlier on as well. Did you feel that same pain adding to the mix?
Not as much as Junior and Rob did tonight. I was running a completely different brake bias to those guys, and I was pretty comfortable with that. First race, I think Rob has got tangled up with Fish and Jamie, and that's tagged me on the way by, because I think that was probably on the way to a solid 5th, 4th. I don't even know where I was running at the time, but I know we were all together, and when it all kicked off in front of me, you're like, oh, game on. And then Rob's came back across the track and just tagged me, and that spun me round, and you try and get going again, and which we did do, and it was just all about trying to reconsolidate things, and not get too involved, but then get involved when you really needed to. It was just about hitting your marks tonight, making sure you got the lap time, and staying in the pack, because the draft is so important round Silverstone, and if you stay in that pack, then you've got a chance at, a couple of times tonight, even though we're running a lot more front brake bias, it got sideways a couple of times, and you're just hoping that other people will do that, which they did do. And there was some really good racing. I really enjoyed that. I was talking in the chat before, and Matt added that races in this. I love racing against Matt, because as fast as he is, you just know he's not going to do anything stupid. And that reminds me of a guy that I used to race against in Legend Cars in real life, a guy called Chris Grieve. And, I had some of the best races of my life with that guy. But you just knew he was never, ever going to do something stupid. Not that Matt did anything stupid tonight, but what Matt did do tonight, which was quite a surprise, was he really got his elbows out, which was like, go on, son, you know what I mean? And it was really, really enjoyable, and that's how it should be. And there's not the fallout tonight like there was last week. So onwards and upwards. Like I say, we've really enjoyed the season, whatever it brings us. Obviously, with Chris not coming in tonight, we may be in a chance for 3rd in the Pro Championship, which when you think back when they promoted me into Pro, I was moaning a little bit because I'm not a pro driver at this, but we've took it by the horns. We've tried as best, and if we end up third, I think that's a real big achievement for me, really. So yeah, considering who you race against each week in the pro division, yeah, we'll take that if it comes. If it finishes, if Junior finishes above me because I think he's in fourth, and so be it. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I think we've equipped ourselves well in this league, and we look forward to the next one.
Oh, indeed. And obviously, with race number 2 being about trying to recover the places you lost in race 1, you finished P7, and then making your way into race number 3, the announcement that you would be on pole position for race 3. Now, I'll take the bribe after this interview if you don't mind. Joking aside, however, your thoughts on when you were told that you would be on pole for race 3 and the whole HSR team would be right behind you?
Yeah, well, okay, let's go back to race 2 because we're obviously running 5th, 6th, and 7th. Obviously, the drop scores aren't out of it, so we sit in a HSR chat separately. So it was like, where do team orders come in? Because really, that should have been the 5th place. Now, Rob, to be fair, tried to back off running up to the line, but Junior was behind him and he wasn't obviously too sure what was going on. And Rob's like, I'm trying to give your dad the place and give 5th place so we can try and get on. But listen, it's all put to bed. And then, we get out of race 2 and I've gone for a cigarette and gone to the toilet and stuff. And then you sit back in the seat and put your headphones on and Junior's like, Dad, you're on pole. I'm beside you, and I think Rob's third. And it was like, okay, well, it's game on. So just whoever gets off the line first, because that's the problem with a Hyundai Elantra is for some reason at some tracks it will not get off the line. You can sit on the rev limiter. I've put on manual clutch because we knew it was a problem coming in. It was like Canadian Motorsport Park. Where else were? I think last week it didn't get off the line too well either. So it was like, okay, we need to get going, and whoever leads or whatever going in, then it's up to the other two to try and make it as difficult as they can for everybody else, which, to be fair, they did do. And to be sort of 2 seconds in the lead, and yeah, I think Junior's ran a little bit wide or got knocked a little bit wide or whatever, and then obviously Mikey and Fish and people are through. And listen, Mikey's just different level. We were talking before we came into this. He's just, how you can win a race on a track so close when the times are so close, and then win both. Did he win both races? The first and second race by like 9 seconds, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, to do that. Listen, Mikey, you are different, classmate, and that's a frustrating thing for me. Is that's where I want to be. I want to be at that level where you are just completely dominating races. I don't have that consistency. You saw that in the third race. Even though my teammates had done their very best to hold up the field, I just cannot get the consistency together where you can either hold a gap or just pull away from the field, and that frustrates me really, really badly. But it'll come. We just got to keep grinding and just keep practicing and keep taking parts in these leagues because it's really good. It's good fun. The banter's brilliant. Yes, do you have nights where it's really frustrating? Last week, yes. I think everybody gathered that in the interview that I did afterwards. Even my daughter said, Christ, you sound like really moany. And I don't want to come across like that, but I think that was just on the back of everything that happened. I think everybody was not too happy about stuff that went on last week. But we come to Brands Hatch next week, and that's the final round. And then, you look forward to season 2 touring cars. We'll be back in it as a team. Not sure we'll be in the same car, but we'll discuss that before we get to it. It'd be very easy to go, let's jump in the Honda, but then you want it to be a spectacle, and I think me and Rob are in agreement, Junior isn't, that the Hyundai Elantra is a real challenging car to drive. And and it takes a lot to get on top of it. And it's really satisfying when you do that. You know, you look at Knockhill, I think we dominated. Well, Junior certainly dominated, and I had some really good results there, as did Rob. So, will we be back in the Elantra in season 2? Who knows? Let's wait and see.
Oh, indeed. We'll have to wait and see with regards to that. But just before we get to the end of our time with yourself, John, I have to ask, Brands Hatch, Grand Prix circuit, yay or nay in terms of a circuit that you enjoy?
Well, the Hyundai was quick there on the Indy. Will it be quick on the GP track? Yes, I think it will be. I think we're in for an absolute barnstormer. I think Jamie's won the championship. I know he hasn't won the championship yet, but I think, you know, he's not going to do anything silly. Although he's not had the best of nights tonight, and I think, you know, through Jamie's own admission, through speaking to him, he does get a bit overdrivey when he's on the back foot. But look, is he going to win the championship? I hope so. I think he's been really solid throughout this season. Yeah, and you look up to him, and you know, we're just going to go there as a team and do the best we can. And if we can consolidate, you know, if I can get third in the Pro Championship, I don't know where that'll leave us overall with all the drop scores and stuff that's got to come. If we can get second in the constructors, we've had a really strong season in TCR. You know, this is my first season at it. You know, Junior's obviously at a really good level, and so is Rob. And I think we've got a really strong team. We tried to draft in a Brett Ragosta with Bobby Thompson, who I've known since, you know, I've known Bobby since he was probably 6 or 7 years old. And, you know, to see him in the sim is just, yeah, he's different level. So we sort of hoped that he was going to do a lot more than he did. He didn't do anything, I don't think, on a Thursday night, because obviously he's committed into racing British touring cars and doing all his driver coaching and that. But we thought we'd pulled a bit of a flanker, thinking, you know what, we may just steal the constructors with Bobby coming in and obviously support from Junior. And if he wasn't having a good night, then the support would come from me and Rob. But you know, we'll regroup. Let's get next week out of the way, and then look forward to the new season whenever it comes. I think the rumours are it'll be towards the end of November. So yeah, it's been great. It's been a great season so far.
Oh, indeed. And with one more round on the cards, we look forward to seeing how you get on at Brands Hatch. But just before we do let you go, John, is there anybody you'd like to say a thank you to or give a shout out to live on air this evening?
Yeah, my dad, as normal. He'll probably still be watching and listening. He never used to listen to the interview thing because I don't even think he knew it took place. So, Dad, I love you. Kids, love you. And any of the guys, because I post this stuff in a chat. So, any of the guys that work with me at Proximo Limited, if you're still watching, guys, thank you. And we will catch up tomorrow morning on Teams, no doubt.
Oh, I'm sure they're all grateful for the shout out, John, particularly your father and also your children. But with that, congratulations on your results today, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit for the season finale in a week's time.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
All the best.
Cheers, man. Bye-bye.
So hearing there from John Higgins Sr., who's really enjoyed the racing tonight. You can tell that in his voice. I'm very happy, John, with that. And, well, we saw how close it was in qualifying, and race number 1 didn't work out for John. But in return, a drive to P7 in race number 2, which put him on pole for the purposes of race number 3. Unfortunate in terms of the situation with regards to his connectivity and the contact between himself and Mikey Doble, which, much like what Mikey said in his interview, robbed us of a battle for the win all the way to the potential finish, or the opportunity for Higgins Sr. to really dig deep for a podium. But still, one more round on the cards. We've still got plenty of racing to come in a week's time, and HSR will be looking to end their season on a high in the car of the Hyundai Elantra, which they're learning day in, day out, and finding new ways to unlock the pace hidden behind the South Korean machinery. And, well, can they potentially get back to the top step of the podium, where it's Higgins Sr., Higgins Jr., or Rob Rob McGregor in that finale, we will have to wait and see. But now, speaking of one driver who's been waiting for his interview for some time, we come to our last interviewee, and a fast one at that, of Jamie Dorey in the number 13 car, our pro driver. And as he shortly joins us, it has been an evening of mixed fortunes, but one where he's limited the damage and then still managed to pick up ground in the championship. And as we very shortly bring him into the interview room, I think it's going to be a mixed set of emotions for the pro championship leader. But as he now joins us in the interview room, Jamie, a very mixed night of racing. Qualifying went well. Race number 1 was a race to forget. Race number 2, mixed fortunes. And then race number 3 ended on a high. Has Silverstone treated you nicely, or do you think there was a lot more to take from the circuit today?
I think the latter speaks for itself, really. Yeah, no, pre-practice races, car was fine. Good pace, good quality pace. Me, Mikey, and Adam using each other in draft going really well. Race 1, I've seen a bit of it. I haven't looked too much. 2 cars battling, went for the inside, the cutback on them, rather than being hounded by my championship rival. And then contact broken front left. Race 2, obviously starting in the rough and tumble, shall we say. Was thinking, okay, I'll be happy with P6 to P8 for the reverse grid. Opening lap, a car come across when there were 3 wide and on the outside got caught up. Gave the car a bit of damage, and it was just trying to get through then. Got a contact from another NXTGEN car in the rear, which cost me time. And then race 3 was just heads down, elbows out kind of racing.
Oh, most definitely. And coming on to race 3 shortly, but races 1 and 2, of course, first up. I have to ask, given how close it is between yourself and Gavan Gardener in the championship with you leading, race number 1 surely must have had you a little bit in a bit of a squeaky bum situation, because Gardner was able to pick up quite a good result, but not able to get himself onto the podium. So you must have thought, okay, it's not as damaging as it might have been.
Well, it still is damaging when he finishes ahead of me. As I've said week on week now, it's I was taking the Turkington-esque approach of, okay, I just need to finish ahead of him. If I can't, I'll finish a position behind him. I just, as long as I'm not letting him pull too many points, I can be around Gavan and see what can happen. To be honest, when racing, my relative didn't see where he was. I don't know where he's finished. I've not had a look, but I know I finished P17. So yeah, it's one of those points lost situations that I don't know how the points are going to work out with everyone's dropped rounds. And obviously going into next week, we'll know what the gap is, but I knew it was 9 points going into this week. So we shall see.
Oh, indeed. Then going into race number 2, of course, much like you said, a race which started off not the way you wanted, but you battled your way up to P9 in the end. Must have been quite an exhausting race given all the adversity you had to work your way through, but the plus side of it was that Gardner finished 1 place behind you.
Yeah, so again, opening lap, first corner, without trying to pick off the guys that are not quite the same pace as me, and then I can knuckle down, see how the car's behaving, and push through. Obviously, caught up in a bit of melee. Lap 1, car had damage. The Honda being the slowest down the straight, it was even more painful. Quite early on, I was having to overdrive it into corners to try and pull on the likes of the Audi and things, Paul Scott. So yeah, I could see Gavan with his nice pink wheels ahead, and he was kind of my target. And eventually, I had a little bit of helping hand. Quite lucky, 1 or 2 cars didn't put up too much of a fight. Another couple were just out there to race as they should be. Excuse me. And I was once I saw him and I knew me and him were racing together, as I've always said, Gavan's racing's phenomenal, and I like racing him. I enjoy it. So if he wins, fair play to him. But it was that 1 extra point or 2 extra point, depending on where we finished in class, it means a lot.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of results that mean a lot, race number 3 saw you come from P9 on the grid, charging all the way up to P2 in a huge melee of battling for P2 between 7 and then eventually 10 drivers over the 20 minutes. Just take us through how exhausting that must have been.
Yeah, so obviously it's one of those race 3. It puts a spark in the fire, shall we say, or whatever. If I can give you my perspective of it, is I didn't even know there was 10 cars battling for the lead. My rear view mirror was pretty much turned off. I was just looking ahead. I know there was a fair bit of battling, but once I had my teammates around me, Adam, as well, it was quite handy because I could sit behind him. We race very similar with brakes, so it was kind of as Bobby Thompson said to us, not Bobby, sorry, Creasy said to us. He goes, it's called a cubal. If one of them goes through and opens the door, the car behind gives them a hit, and you both go through. So one's forced the gap open or got the gap open, the other one follows through. We've done that in turn 3 and 4 with John Higgins. Adam managed to get the gap, and I just followed him through, which helped massively. Again, thanks to Adam for giving me the P2 when I was going to get a P3. It helps me a hell of a lot, and it's good to have teammates that are willing to help me put up a fight for the championship going into the last round.
Indeed, and great teamwork between yourself and Adam over the course of race number 3. And we did see that position swap at the line, which sets you up nicely for going into the season finale. And speaking of the finale, Brands Hatch Grand Prix awaits us all. And of course, touring cars heading there this weekend for their season finale. We've got ours next Thursday. How are you feeling for the Kentish circuit?
Yeah, so Brands Hatch, it's either done me very well or done me diabolical. It's one of those tracks. It depends who you're racing against, and it depends how they want to race. It's not the widest of tracks. It's quite a fast track, especially out the back. You have to really have trust and faith. I mean, we saw from what 3 years ago was it? 2-3 years ago with Camish, um, with brakes and things, and it's one of those tracks. It's probably not the best one to go down to the season finale. I'd much rather something with wide open circuits and not many barriers. But we'll have to see. I mean, I think round the back the Honda might struggle, but as we know from earlier in the season, around the Indy circuit, when we had quite a good result, I took 2 of the wins. The Honda's incredibly strong around the Indy part of it, so we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, indeed, we will. But before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to on the broadcast?
Yeah, the usual lot. Obviously, NXTGEN Racing, yourself, all of our sponsors, to everyone, my teammates especially, who helped me out that race, and people who have been, watching this through and through, for the first time ever. to my mum, who's actually watching this, and and my brother. So yeah, we'll see how it goes in Brands. Not that I mean, looking forward to it, but we'll see.
Well, Jamie, with that, we wish you all the best in your preparations for Brands Hatch. Thank you for joining us in the interview room as always, and congratulations on your results today at Silverstone.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks, Paul.
Take care. So hearing there from Jamie Dorey, our final interviewee of the evening, and mixed emotions from what's been a mixed night for Jamie Dorey, and some positives to take from it, particularly that race 3 second place in the charge through the order and working with his teammate Adam Delman all the way up to the finish line to secure that P2. A major team effort as explored there in the interview with Jamie Dorey himself. But now going into a season finale at a circuit that is unforgiving. You get it wrong at Brands Hatch Grand Prix and it could all be over in a given race, and that's why I think there Dorey's not counting any of his chances out until he's turned every single lap and that final checkered flag falls, because it could go either way. He's gained some ground, he's opened up the gap going into the finale versus Gavan Gardener, but at the same time Gardener is not too far away and will be able to update on the exact points and the conundrums when we go into the season finale in a week's time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. And if you did enjoy the show tonight and want to know more about the Next Gen racing community in terms of the series we run and who we are and everything else in between, then why not check out either our official website, which is at www.nextgenracing.co.uk, whereby you can go to our website, for it is the home of clean and fair sim racing for all, where we putting all the details of our professionally organised sim racing events, championships, and our wider community. Or alternatively, if you don't necessarily want to go to our website, you can always go to our official Facebook group. That is facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing to hear all the latest news and updates with regards to ongoing and upcoming series. But for our drivers, now they'll be packing up their bags and making their way down to the Brands Hatch circuit, heading from Northamptonshire to the Kent County circuit. We've been there once before, back in round number 2, and we're going there for the season finale, Brands Hatch Grand Prix, round number 10, in a week's time on Thursday, the 13th of October, 2022. And come the end, with the final checker flag that falls, we must crown our champions in the Pro class, in the overall, the Pro-Am class, and also in the Teams Championship. In the Pro class, will it be Jamie Dorey or Gavan Gardener? In the Pro-Am class, we do believe that with the results from tonight, Ben Bennyworth may have sealed the deal, so it comes down to the question of will it be Paul Scott or John Burnham who takes second place in the Pro-Am class? All that and more shall be resolved at Brands Hatch Grand Prix, and we would love to have you there. Join us to see it through to its conclusion. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been Next Gen Racing. I've been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain of Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and remember, most importantly, to stay on track. Good night.